The little girl, Rosalia, had been starving on the streets for 2.5 days when she spotted a man lying in an alley, covered in blood. Seeing him hovering between life and death, and desperately needing money herself, she began searching through his pockets. Suddenly, the man's eyes flickered open. He grabbed her wrist. It was then that Rosalia noticed his crimson eyes and silver-tinged hair. Her heart skipped a beat. The man's icy voice echoed in her ears. Kill her. Could this man before her be the Duke of Valencia, the one who would eventually kill her? Not long ago, Rosalia had stumbled upon a book. It told the tale of a saintess, beloved by the gods, who would save all lives when the world was on the brink of destruction. But this girl, meant to be cherished, had disappeared at the age of 2.5. Years later, two identical girls appeared. Their only difference was the color of their eyes, one yellow, one blue. Everything else, including their name, was the same. And so, Rosalia, an orphan named Cordelia in the orphanage, was mistaken for the saintess's double. They were thrown into a fire. The saintess, ever optimistic, grasped Rosalia's hand, certain that someone would come save them. But as Rosalia watched the saintess being taken away, she realized it had all been a cruel joke. They hadn't come to save them. They had come to save her. Rosalia escaped the fire, only to be kidnapped and used as bait. The kidnappers were from the House of Valencia, one of the four great families. The Duke of Valencia, in his quest for power, had planned to kidnap the saintess, Cordelia, that day. But he had taken the wrong girl. With the casual order, kill her, the girl who had been used as the saintess's substitute met her end, filled with resentment and regret. When Rosalia, the beggar girl, learned of this fate, she felt a jolt of fear. She pulled on an overcoat she'd found in the trash, concealing the items beneath it. She wanted to escape, to flee before the saintess left the orphanage, just like in the book. But just then, a fat woman stormed in, fuming. "You lazy pig. I know you're faking it." But Rosalia wasn't one to be easily intimidated. She had escaped the orphanage a year ago. She could certainly escape this. "I'm standing right in front of you. It must be all that blubber blocking your view." The woman was speechless. Gritting her teeth, she shoved a basket of flowers at Rosalia, declaring she couldn't eat until she'd sold them all. Her words dripped with false sweetness. Rosalia couldn't take it anymore. She kicked the woman's ample backside, giving her no time to react, and bolted for the door, sticking her tongue out as she went. Out on the quiet street, she looked at the flowers in her hand, easily picked from any park. Who would buy these? It was just another way to torment her. But it didn't matter. She wasn't going back. She wouldn't be thrown into another fire. She wouldn't be called lowly scum again. To survive, she had to escape. Now, but then, a metallic scent of blood reached her. She peered into the alley and found the scene that began this story. The man, unaware of her fear, perhaps delirious from blood loss, pulled her into an embrace. "Rosalind, why didn't you choose me? I'll kneel for you. I'll bark like a dog. I'll do anything. So please don't love him. Love me." His voice grew weaker, then faded into silence. Rosalia pushed him off with effort and snatched his money pouch. She was elated. No more hunger. Humming a tune, she turned to leave. But then, a flicker of conscience, however small, sparked within her. If I help him a little, maybe he'll reward me. She wasn't thinking clearly, only of survival. The Duke of Valencia might be a terrible person, but he must have some shred of humanity left. With that thought, Rosalia strained every muscle, dragging him to an abandoned mansion. He hadn't stirred throughout the ordeal. She had been pricked with needles, beaten black and blue, and starved to the point of wanting to eat her own flesh, but she had no idea how to treat a wound like this. Suddenly, she remembered the overcoat she'd found in the trash. She wrapped it around the man's wound. Looking at her handiwork, Rosalia prayed he would give her something in return. She hoped that in the distant future, he would show her mercy and spare her life. She clutched the money pouch. "This can save me now." But then, something around the man's neck caught her eye. She stared at the glittering necklace. This could be worth something too. But when she opened it, she saw a lock of red hair. Worried it might be something truly personal, Rosalia placed it back. Soon, drowsiness overcame her. Perhaps the Duke's fever hadn't fully subsided yet. When he opened his eyes again, the sun was already setting. Still hazy, he was just about to sit up when a voice startled him from behind. "Who are you?" Rosalia jumped, stammering, I saved you." The Duke, however, asked, "Are you Rosalind's daughter?" Rosalia was confused. Then, Are you Cordelia? Hearing the familiar name, Rosalia felt a bead of sweat trickle down her cheek. No, I've never heard that name. Looking at the girl before him, the Duke gently lifted her chin. Your eyes, they resemble Rosalind's. Rosalia finally understood who he was talking about. Rosalind, the Saintess's mother, the Duke of Valencia's first love. The book had said that Rosalind, a fallen noble, had received a divine victory later in life and married the second son of the Alisa family. But when the Saintess was 2.5, Rosalind was tragically killed in an attack, and their child disappeared. The Duke of Valencia, while searching for that child, was ambushed and left unconscious. It was then that the Saintess found him and used her divine powers to heal him. The moment the Duke saw the Saintess, he recognized her as Rosalind's daughter. But Rosalia wasn't the Saintess. She hated anyone who mentioned that name. She slapped his hand away, vehemently denying she was who he thought she was. Seeing her agitation, the Duke realized she might know something. Just as Rosalia was about to retort, a noise came from outside. In a flash, Rosalia grabbed the Duke's hand and pulled him behind a crate, clamping a hand over his mouth to silence him. She recognized the sounds, the thugs hired by the fat woman. None of the children who fell into their hands ever survived. The thought terrified her. Her small hand tightened over the Duke's mouth, almost suffocating him. She finally released him. The Duke, now noticing the bruises and needle marks covering her arms. His expression changed, but Rosalia didn't notice. She hugged herself tightly, trembling. The thugs had found the bundle she'd left outside. She didn't want to be dragged back, beaten to death like the other children. Just then, a hand gently rested on her head, pushing it down. Close your eyes. Cover your ears. Stay here. Obediently, Rosalia closed her eyes and covered her ears tightly. The thugs were surprised by the Duke's sudden appearance, but seeing him covered in blood, they assumed he was near death. With her ears covered, Rosalia listened to the commotion outside. The metallic scent of blood grew stronger. Finally, the sound subsided. A tall shadow loomed over her, a hand gently stroking her head. Rosalia opened her eyes to see the Duke. He gestured for her to sit down and asked the question that had been on his mind. Why did you leave the orphanage? Did you run away? The question brought back unpleasant memories. For as long as she could remember, the orphanage had been drawing her blood. It wasn't until they hurriedly moved one day that she managed to escape that hell. But if she told the truth, the Duke would surely mistake her for the Saintess. And he kept calling her Rosalind's daughter, convinced she was destined to be the Saintess. Rosalia was furious. I don't have a mother, she declared. Then, when the Duke asked her age, her agitation made her blurt out, I'm 8 years old. That's what they said at the orphanage. She quickly clamped a hand over her mouth, mortified by her slip-up. But just then, the Duke said, come with me. I'll adopt you. The Duke, single for 2.5 years, returned home that day with a little girl in his arms. The butler merely pointed at her in surprise, earning a sharp reprimand from the Duke, who warned him to watch his tongue. Entrusting Rosalia to Emma, the maid, the Duke turned to leave, but Rosalia clutched his clothes, a flicker of fear in her eyes. I have to take care of the adoption paperwork, he explained. That way you can officially become my daughter. So stay here tonight. Don't try to run away. Rosalia fell silent. She knew she wasn't who he was looking for. How long could she stay here? And would he really keep his earlier promise? She had no way of knowing. Just a while ago, when the Duke had offered to adopt her, Rosalia had thought he was just trying to appease her. As soon as the real Saintess appeared, he would abandon her. Why don't you just be honest? She challenged. You need a girl who can pretend to be the Saintess. To her surprise, the Duke readily admitted it, asking if she would agree to his proposal under those terms. While Rosalia hated the needle marks covering her arms, and she hated being beaten and constantly hungry, what she hated most was being a substitute. Unable to contain her emotions, she burst into tears. Just then, the Duke handed her doll. Although it was just a piece of ragged cloth she'd found in the trash, it was the one thing she'd cherished since childhood. If you come with me, he offered, I'll give you prettier dolls and clean clothes. You'll sleep in the biggest room. Rosalia's heart wavered. Even though she knew he mistook her for the Saintess, she reasoned that a few days wouldn't hurt. What if I'm not Rosalind's daughter? She asked. What if I'm not the Saintess? What will you do with me then? Will you kill me? The Duke fell silent. He looked at the girl, her expression resolute, yet her body trembling with fear. He couldn't fathom what she had endured, but he trusted his instincts. He knew, even if he was mistaken, he wouldn't abandon her. I swear on the Valencia family name, he declared, I will never kill you. His words were sincere. She desperately needed a safe place. She extended her small hand, explaining she didn't have a name and would tell him later when she thought of one. The Duke withdrew his hand. That's a bit of a problem, he explained. We need a name for the official adoption papers. Rosalia panicked. Did this mean he wouldn't adopt her? He reassured her, saying she just needed to choose a name. Rosalia, however, loathed the name Cordelia. Then don't call me Cordelia, he said, covering her eyes as he lifted her into his arms. Rosalia, he murmured. What do you think of that? Rosalia's face lit up. She loved the name. But the next moment, a cascade of gold coins tumbled from her pockets. The Duke stared, momentarily stunned. Rosalia considered running. Understanding dawned on the Duke, but he said nothing, simply stating, under no circumstances does a member of the Valencia family stoop low. As a Valencia, you must remember this. And so, Rosalia was taken to the Duke's home. As Emma, the maid, led Rosalia to be washed, she learned the girl's name was Rosalia, and that she was only 8 years old. The butler immediately concluded that she was the Duke's child with his first love. He's lost his mind, he muttered. He's gone completely mad. After being washed, Rosalia, dressed in an ill-fitting nightgown, was presented with a dessert. Emma, worried that the girl hadn't eaten in a week, had prepared something easily digestible, but Rosalia refused to eat, her head bowed. The landlady had always told her that children like her had to look pitiful to earn money, to receive scraps of leftover food. If she ate the food enjoyed by others, she wouldn't garner sympathy. Without sympathy, she wouldn't get anything to eat. Emma was shocked that such words came from a little girl. Kneeling down, she softly reassured Rosalia. From now on, I'll prepare delicious food for you every day. You're a person, and you should eat what people eat. As adults, we shouldn't burden children with the responsibility of providing. You don't have to worry about earning money anymore. Just eat your fill, sleep well, and grow up without worry. It was the first time anyone had said such words to Rosalia. It felt strange. After finishing her food, she shuffled around in the 2.5-meter-long nightgown. Emma sighed, wishing she had kept Lady Ingrid's childhood clothes. That way, young Master Julian would have something to remember his mother by. This piqued Rosalia's curiosity. She knew Ingrid was the Duke's sister, but she didn't know who Julian was. He's Lady Ingrid's son, Emma explained. He's currently recuperating in our castle. If you happen to meet him, don't be frightened. Young Master Julian suffers from a terrible curse. Rosalia recalled the books she had read. Before marrying Ingrid, the Emperor had a beloved woman and a son with her. After Ingrid's death, the Emperor immediately made that woman his empress. Unlike the Crown Prince's fondness for the Saintess, Julian, the second prince, was indifferent to her, even after she lifted his curse. Rosalia figured she wouldn't encounter him and dismissed the thought. Entering the lavish and magnificent room, Rosalia gaped in astonishment. She had never imagined the Duke's bedroom could be so large. As she lay in bed, Emma gently kissed her forehead. Rosalia, unsure of its meaning, learned it was a charm for sweet dreams. She immediately hugged Emma. I want Emma to have sweet dreams too. Later that night, lying in the warm, large bed, Rosalia couldn't fall asleep. Is it really okay for me to stay here? She wondered. Meanwhile, back in the alley, passers-by discovered several mangled bodies. They were the landlady and her gang, the ones who had profited from the orphans. Strangely, only the adults were there. The children were nowhere to be found. Rosalia remained blissfully unaware of these events. As the morning sun bathed the world in its golden light, the excited girl rolled around in her bed. Just as she sighed contentedly, she froze. A head hung, suspended directly in front of her. A blood-curdling scream echoed through the Duke's mansion. The Duke turned around to see Rosalia running towards him, clinging to his leg. Through her terrified words, he learned the cause of her fright. It's a horse's head, he explained, a taxidermied specimen. It serves as a reminder of our mission to eliminate the family symbolized by the white horse, to sever their heads. The family symbolized by the white horse, he revealed, was the Alisa family. Rosalia finally understood the depth of the Duke's hatred for the family his first love had married into. But even this grim revelation couldn't dampen Rosalia's appetite. Sitting in the Duke's lap, she felt a surge of happiness, as if soaring through the sky. This is real bread, she exclaimed. What I ate before was practically dough. This is so delicious I could fly. The Duke merely sighed, thinking it was high time he found a tutor to teach Rosalia some manners. Rosalia, meanwhile, worried about his finances. Are you sure you have enough money? She asked anxiously. The Duke simply picked up a fork and handed it to her. Earning money isn't something you need to worry about, he said gently. Right now, you should focus on eating your meat with a knife and fork. Seeing her hesitant expression and recalling what Emma had told him, a wave of anger washed over him. Simon, he commanded, tell Ashy to tear apart all the vermin we caught yesterday. Rosalia had no idea what he meant by vermin. After breakfast, Emma asked Rosalia what kind of bedroom she wanted. Without hesitation, Rosalia chose gold. After all, gold could be stolen and sold. Later that night, instead of sleeping, Rosalia was scheming. She had been lucky so far to avoid Cordelia, the saintess, but she knew their encounter was inevitable. Since she didn't know when the saintess would appear, she needed to accumulate valuables beforehand. Remembering the Duke's words from that day, Rosalia hesitated, but for the sake of survival, she felt she had no choice. After stashing the valuables under her bed, she decided to explore. In the pitch-black night, the little girl wandered alone through the silent garden, just as fear urged her to return. The pungent smell of blood filled the air. Footsteps echoed behind her. Turning around, she saw a blond boy with crimson eyes, holding a sword. Blood dripped from its tip. Rosalia shuddered. What's going on? Who is he? I have to run. Her mind raced, but her body remained frozen. The boy's hand reached out, grabbing her wrist, and pressing the sword against her neck. His smile contrasted sharply with the tears welling in Rosalia's eyes. Such a cute exterior. You'd want to hold him close, he mused. Yet at night, he transforms into a bloodthirsty demon, not even sparing his sweet, innocent sister. He wanted to hear the sound of her head being severed. Seeing the snake tattoo on his arm, which seemed to move, Rosalia's fear vanished. She realized the boy was Julian, Ingrid's son. Suddenly, a rumbling sound interrupted the tense moment. At this critical juncture, Rosalia was hungry. Mortified, she wished the earth would swallow her whole. The next moment, the boy's grip on the sword loosened, and it clattered to the ground. Julian clutched his chest in pain, collapsing before Rosalia's astonished eyes. The girl was dumbfounded. What should I do? She wondered. Should I call Emma? Just then, a voice called out to her. It was the Duke. He had gone to her room to check on her, only to find it empty. Rosalia, he asked, his voice laced with concern, why did you sneak out in the middle of the night? Are you hurt? Unsure how to answer, Rosalia mumbled something about wanting to play in the mud. Don't ever disappear like that again without telling anyone, he said sternly. Seeing his worried expression, Rosalia felt a mix of happiness and sadness. He's only worried because he thinks I'm a saintess, she thought dejectedly. Later, as she was about to ask what to do with the boy, her stomach rumbled again. Embarrassed, she shifted her weight. The Duke then led her to get something to eat. As Rosalia savored the bread, she felt a sense of contentment, as if she were eating clouds. This made the Duke's eyes widen. Rosalia had said the same thing. Like mother, like daughter, he mused. Rosalia, however, found this strange. That woman wasn't her mother. The Duke then confirmed that the boy was indeed Julian, the snake tattoo serving as undeniable proof. He explained that the blood Julian was covered and was merely from the chickens in the coop. To change the subject, Rosalia asked if the Duke had found a tutor for her. He explained that the tutor he sought had to be a graduate of the academy, ranked second in their class, proficient in at least 3 musical instruments, skilled in fine arts, and fluent in 2 or more foreign languages. Rosalia was stunned, her jaw dropping so low she could have swallowed a roc's egg. Did such a person even exist? And why would such a person agree to tutor her? Surely, other jobs would be more worthwhile. Although the Duke's mansion was vast, the only people she had interacted with were the Duke, Emma, and Simon. She longed to see a new face. Held in the Duke's arms, Rosalia wondered why he didn't do that to her. Another good dream followed. The word curse made the Duke wary. Learning it was from Emma, he relaxed, gently kissing the girl's forehead. Sweet dreams, he whispered. The next morning, Rosalia was informed that Julian wanted to apologize and had invited her to his quarters. But the lingering scent of blood in the air gave her pause. When a maid opened the door, Rosalia hid behind Emma, refusing to go out, her eyes wide. Looking at Julian, someone she never expected to interact with, she couldn't believe that this boy was the one who had tried to kill her last night. He looks like an angel, she blurted out, instantly mortified by her involuntary words. Flustered, she hid behind Emma again. Could this truly be the same crazed boy from last night? Julian, hearing her compliment, was taken aback. He thanked her. It was the first time he'd received such praise. He then sat up in bed, assuring a worried Emma that he was fine. "You're Rosalia, aren't you?" he asked. Rosalia, no longer hiding, patted her small chest and replied in her childish voice, "Yep, I'm happy to meet you. I'm Rosalia. You can call me Julian," the boy said, taking her small hand and gently kissing it. Rosalia's cheeks flushed crimson. She didn't understand what he had just done, having never received any noble education. Emma smiled and prepared to leave. This startled Rosalia. Why was she leaving? Before she could protest, Emma closed the door, leaving the boy and girl alone. "I'm sorry," Julian began. "Emma always fusses over me. I don't mind, but after what happened last night, you probably don't want to be alone with me, especially with the rumors that being around me brings a curse." He started to call for Emma. Rosalia stopped him, grabbing his hand. She pulled a little too hard, and Julian swayed. Rosalia lost her footing and was about to fall. Luckily, Julian reacted quickly. When a startled Rosalia opened her eyes, wondering why she hadn't fallen, she found herself in Julian's arms. "Are you all right?" he asked. But a second later, Rosalia cried out, "Who said curses are contagious? They're not. Which idiot said that?" Her seemingly casual words touched the boy's heart. He reached out to help her up. "Even though you haven't officially been adopted yet, we'll soon be cousins," he said. "I'll be more careful and won't hurt you again. I hope you understand. I don't mean you any harm. I just want to get along with you." Rosalia refused to let him pull her up, afraid he might let go. She now realized she hadn't officially been adopted by the Duke yet. She had assumed the process was complete. She felt a pang of disappointment. But hearing the boy cough, Rosalia rolled up her sleeves. "Do I have a snake tattoo now?" "See, I don't. If anyone says your curse is contagious again, just throw mud in their face." Having comforted Julian, she prepared to leave. Just before she left, she remembered something. Standing on tiptoe, she kissed the top of his head. "I'm giving you a good dream curse," she said. "You've probably received many before, but I want to bless you too. I hope you get better soon." With that, she left, leaving Julian staring after her. He had heard about the dirty orphan girl who had arrived at the Duke's mansion. She had the silver hair the Duke detested. Except for certain individuals, the Duke had forbidden anyone from interacting with her. The maids all whispered that she used wicked witchcraft. But was a good dream curse really a curse at all? "I'll observe him a little longer," Julian thought, "and see if he's a liar from the Valencia family, an evil sorcerer, or just a genuinely innocent child." Disaster always strikes silently, and Rosalia's disaster had already arrived. A little beggar, hungry for 2.5 days, was brought home by a man to repay him for saving her. He adopted the girl, but because he cared for her so much, he kept her confined, only allowing certain people to interact with her each day. Rosalia was furious about this, unable to understand why the Duke kept her away from others. Clenching her small fists, she stood up, ready to leave, and refused the cookies, leaving the Duke bewildered. It was all because that afternoon, a young man had visited Julian's room. The young man, with black hair and black eyes, was Blake, the heir to the Lampez family. Although everyone said the second prince was a foolish and dull waste of a royal, Blake didn't care about others' opinions. He and Julian were good friends. This time, he had come simply to gossip. "I heard you were recently confined because of the girl the Duke adopted." He even wrote a letter to the Emperor himself, begging him to approve the Duke's adoption request. "Is that girl the Saintess?" Julian, uncharacteristically, replied that she was family. And at the thought of Rosalia, a smile bloomed on the boy's face. This made Blake even more curious about the girl. After bidding farewell to his friend, he yawned and went out. At that moment, Rosalia had just finished her studies for the day. Feeling her bottom going numb, she decided to go outside for some fresh air. Emma was in a difficult position. After all, the Duke had repeatedly warned her to keep Rosalia away from Blake. But it should be all right if it's just for a little while, she thought, and agreed, preparing some coconut-flavored cookies for Rosalia. This made the girl very happy. Emma is the best in the world, she thought, arriving in the large garden. Rosalia was looking at the surrounding scenery when she accidentally bumped into a tree. A book fell directly onto her head, leaving her utterly bewildered. Since when did trees become so studious? She wondered. Picking up the book, she was still confused. Suddenly, with a whoosh, Blake appeared, clutching his head. Then he noticed something incredible, Rosalia pinning him beneath her. "Get off me," she exclaimed. "You're crushing me." But more than being pinned, seeing her cookies scattered and broken, Rosalia felt like she had descended into hell. She hadn't even had a single bite. Blake was perplexed. He couldn't understand why she was so upset over a few cookies. As long as you don't cry, I could buy you lots of cookies, he offered. I'm not crying, she retorted. You're Julian's friend who visited today, right? But why are you here? Shouldn't you be in the guest house? Noticing he was reading in-depth research on airship manufacturing, Rosalia felt utterly bored. This surprised Blake. It was written in ancient script. How could she understand it? Rosalia was baffled. I haven't learned that. What's ancient script? She wondered. She could read the content just by looking at it. Just then, Emma's voice called out, searching for Rosalia. Hearing this, the girl turned to go back. Before leaving, she told Blake, play nicely with Julian and don't fight. Are you Rosalia? He asked, receiving an affirmative answer and looking at Rosalia before him. A smile played on Blake's lips. He gently took her small hand and placed it against his cheek. You're good. I like you. I hate stupid, crybaby girls, but you're not stupid and you don't cry. Faced with the boy's sudden confession, Rosalia was even more bewildered. She flung off his hand, telling him not to say such strange things. Do you hate me? He asked. Yes, very much, she replied without hesitation. Hearing Emma's voice again, Rosalia hurriedly turned to leave. As she went, she asked his name. I'm Blake, he replied. Hearing this, Rosalia was startled. She remembered reading in the book that he was among those who saved the saintess from the fire. Blake was puzzled by her strange reaction. Do you know me? He asked. Rosalia quickly shook her head, saying she'd never heard the name before. As Emma's voice drew closer and the girl was about to reply, a wicked hand clamped over her mouth, dragging her into the nearby bushes. Finding herself being bullied, Rosalia, furious, opened her mouth to bite Blake's finger. Don't you like coconut cookies? I'll buy you some, he whispered. Isn't this what we just agreed on? Blake conceded. He told Rosalia she could ask for anything she wanted as long as she promised not to tell anyone they had met. After 2.5 minutes of thoughtful contemplation, a slow smile spread across Rosalia's face. The girl then sought out Emma, claiming she had been playing in the mud in the garden and hadn't heard her calling. As for whether she had encountered anyone else, no, she insisted. I didn't even see a single hair. This allowed Emma to breathe a sigh of relief as she led Rosalia back inside. Rosalia, however, was puzzled by Emma's urgency. Dismissing the thought, she reached into her pocket, feeling her prize. She hadn't wanted anything too valuable, not wanting to be indebted to the boy, so she had chosen a modest trinket. Judging by Blake's subtle expression, it must be worth a few gold coins. The very next day, as she was dining with the Duke, Blake sent over a large delivery of coconut cookies. While the Duke was still bewildered, Rosalia, in her excitement, let slip a question to the servant about how many Blake had sent. She instantly regretted it. The Duke didn't need to guess to know they had met. To change the subject, Rosalia immediately invited the Duke to share the cookies and suggested they invite Julian too. But the Duke declined her offer, leaving Rosalia confused. I prefer to be alone, he explained, and I have a curse. It's best I don't have much contact with people. Hearing this, Rosalia bristled. A backlash curse isn't contagious, she declared, disappointed. How can you say such hurtful things? We're family. You're such a dummy, she added. The Duke remained unmoved. I want you to keep your distance from him as much as possible, he insisted. Because of the curse, he might lose control and lash out. His condition is unstable. You were lucky that night not to be hurt. Both your safety and Julian's are important to me. Rosalia clenched her fists, then turned and walked away. I don't want any cookies, she declared, leaving the Duke staring after her in surprise. Your Grace, Emma began. The only people who can keep Miss Rosalia company are myself and Master Julian. I think she needs more friends her own age. You must understand, you can't hide her away forever. 8 is a wonderful age. She should be seeing and hearing and experiencing more, meeting all sorts of people, and broadening her horizons. Overprotecting her won't do her any good. He was her first love, the daughter of another, yet the Duke had taken her as his own. But the girl's mother possessed divine power, and so the order revered her as a saintess. If the girl also inherited her mother's abilities, the order would surely take her away to serve the people. If she wasn't a saintess, then the Alisa family certainly wouldn't give up. Sure enough, that very day, priests from the order arrived at the Duke's mansion. Upon seeing the girl, the lead priest, a bald man, grinned. Lady Cordelia, he said, we are priests of the Akasha order. We've come to take you home. Rosalia immediately declared that she wasn't Cordelia and that she certainly wasn't going anywhere with them. But the Duke's silence sent a jolt of fear through her. Panic seized her. "Are you sending me to the order?" she cried. "Why? Is it because I'm useless?" Rosalia's heart ached. She couldn't understand. The man who had sworn in his family's name to protect her, how could he change? "Didn't you say it didn't matter? I can wash clothes and clean, and I won't be picky about food anymore. If you want me to earn money, I'll be obedient." Tears streamed down Rosalia's face. The book had said that her misfortunes were all due to her harsh words. The saintess had also mentioned her problem in the book, telling her to only speak when they were alone. After all, they were best friends. "Is it because I speak unkindly?" she sobbed. "If so, I'll be quiet like a mute. So please don't abandon me." Tears of sorrow traced paths down her cheeks. The Duke finally spoke. "Didn't I tell you?" he said. "We Valencians never bow our heads under any circumstances." As the Duke lifted her into his arms, Rosalia, bewildered, stopped crying. She didn't understand why he hadn't responded to her before. Still sniffling, she corrected him. "You didn't say bow our heads," she said. "You said bend over." Holding Rosalia, the Duke addressed the bald priest. "Anything else to say?" he demanded. It turned out that a short while earlier, the bald priest had approached the Duke, declaring his intention to take Rosalia and claiming it was the Emperor's will, a royal command. But the Duke refused to listen, insisting the girl wasn't Cordelia, but Rosalia. He then ordered the priest to leave. The priest's tone turned low and accusatory. "Are you abusing this child?" he asked. His Majesty is concerned. After all, in abusive households, children are often silenced, just as you have done. Although he knew they were trying to provoke him, the Duke was trapped. He couldn't be accused of such a crime. The bald priest then demanded that the Duke remain silent during their meeting, otherwise the order wouldn't recognize the outcome. Finally free to speak, the Duke immediately ordered his men to drag the priests out and feed them to the chickens. Seeing his imminent demise, the bald priest invoked the names of the Pope and the Emperor. Just then, a bewildered Julian walked into the room. He had heard the order had arrived and wanted to speak with them. Recognizing Julian as the second prince, the bald priest saw a glimmer of hope. He rushed to Julian's side, attempting to incite him by claiming they were merely following orders, while the Duke was defying the Pope and the Emperor. This tactic, he hoped, would both save his life and damage the Duke's reputation. He assumed the second prince would be easily swayed. And indeed, Julian seemed to agree. The words of those two are indeed not to be disobeyed, he conceded. Seeing his ploy about to succeed, a smirk spread across the bald priest's face. Julian, his expression calm, looked at Rosalia, nestled in the Duke's arms. A wave of despair washed over her, causing her to lower her head. Her small hands clenched. "Is this my fate?" she thought. "Will I be taken to the order, meet the saintess, and ultimately die in her place?" The thought made her cling tighter to the Duke's neck. She didn't want to leave. "But priest," Julian began, "did you know that even wild beasts cherish their family? We've only just met, and yet I've already witnessed you making my little sister cry. What do you think I, as her older brother, should do about that? And her name is Rosalia. Please do not casually change her name. It would displease me greatly. She is a member of the Valencia family, not someone you could disrespect so freely." Cold sweat trickled down the bald priest's face. Is this truly the rumored weak and foolish second prince? He looked up, meeting Julian's gaze. He couldn't understand. The boy looked amiable and charming, yet his words dripped with a chilling intent. "It seems you priests have finally accepted your punishment," Julian stated. "By the way, Rosalia, why don't you say something to them?" Emboldened, Rosalia shouted, "I will absolutely not go to the order. Don't ever come to our house again." She huffed, a sound of defiance. Though she didn't know what punishment the priests received at the hands of the knights, Rosalia's life quickly returned to its usual rhythm. Looking at the lavish meal before her, Rosalia's face clouded over. There were bell peppers. Who was it that said they wouldn't be picky anymore? She thought ruefully, forcing herself to eat them. The Duke then informed her that he had found the tutor he had mentioned earlier. The one who could play at least 3 instruments, was skilled in art, and was fluent in at least 2 foreign languages. He must be an amazing and handsome teacher, Rosalia thought excitedly. But the next day, Rosalia was a little confused. Looking at Simon, the butler, standing before her, she asked, "Do you meet all the requirements the Duke mentioned?" To her question, Simon proudly declared that he did. As Simon picked up a pointer, preparing to begin the lesson. He expressed his curiosity about Julian's presence. "I'm here to attend your lesson, of course," Julian replied. "I have much to learn as well." Though slightly taken aback, Simon began his lesson, starting with the origins of the Valencia family. "The four great families of the empire are known as the heart of the nation," he explained. "The Valencia family is one of them. When the world was on the brink of destruction, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, representing the forces of darkness, arrived. So God sent the Holy Son and the Holy Daughter to save the world from the four horsemen. They found the first emperor and gathered four heroes. Together with the Holy Son and Holy Daughter, they bravely fought against the four horsemen and achieved ultimate victory. But due to the ravages of war, the entire nation was left desolate, and the emperor and the four heroes were afflicted with an incurable curse. Even the Holy Son and Holy Daughter couldn't remove it. They could only seal the curse within the heroes' bodies. When the first emperor established the empire, he bestowed upon the heroes the title of Duke. The Alisa family resides in the east, the Petros family in the west, the Lampez family in the south, and the Valencia family in the north. Although the first emperor, who prevented the world's destruction, lived a peaceful life thanks to the blessings of the Holy Son and Holy Daughter, his descendants and the heroes' offspring were different. They married commoners to continue their lineage, and occasionally, children were born bearing the curse. Young Master Julian is deeply affected by this curse from birth. However, if purified with divine power, the curse can be dispelled, provided Miss Rosalia possesses the key. The saintess, out of love for her adopted daughter, kept her confined. Fortunately, after listening to his maid's advice, the Duke finally agreed to let the girl go outside. Upon learning she could play outdoors, Rosalia couldn't stop smiling. This was Rosalia's first time leaving the Duke's mansion since her arrival. Her face radiated joy, having experienced the wonders of teleportation magic before. She was less than thrilled when, upon disembarking the carriage, she promptly threw up. Listless, she asked Simon to go inside ahead of her, promising to join him later. After 2.5 hours of recovery, a slightly revived Rosalia entered the grand hall. Just then, Rosalia's appearance caught the eye of a golden-haired girl. "Which family is she from?" the girl wondered. "I've never seen her before." The blonde girl then stopped Rosalia, inquiring about her parents' whereabouts. Upon hearing Rosalia's reply that she had no parents, the blonde girl was taken aback. What? She thought dismissively. So she's just a commoner. Rosalia, unfazed, ignored her and continued on. Wandering through the art exhibition, she searched for Simon. Just then, a particular painting caught her attention. The chaotic lines left her bewildered. What is this supposed to be? She thought. Even I could paint something like this. Rosalia didn't realize that her quiet mumbling had been overheard by a boy standing behind her. He loudly called out to her, his voice filled with reprimand. He informed Rosalia that the painting on the wall was worth 250 gold coins, not something a little brat like her could replicate. He proudly declared it was the artist's final masterpiece, created just before his death from starvation. Still holding the painting, Rosalia couldn't comprehend. What's the point of being valuable if you're dead from hunger? She wondered. What's the point? He retorted. It's for our family to make money, of course. After all, the artist was under our patronage until the very end. Without us, he wouldn't have become a famous painter. I'm sure he's honored, even in the afterlife. Rosalia was even more confused by the boy's capitalist attitude. Didn't his family deliberately starve the artist? Just as the angry boy was about to berate Rosalia, the blonde girl appeared. She whispered something in his ear. How did you even get in here? He demanded, poking Rosalia. Don't think you can infiltrate noble circles just by wearing nice clothes. Keep dreaming, you lowborn scum. We can see right through you. Oblivious to the impending disaster, the boy continued to ramble about the vast difference between their social standings. Suddenly, whack, a painting slammed against his head. The assailant was Rosalia. The air thickened with shock. The boy stared at her in disbelief. But Rosalia clearly wasn't finished. Raising the painting again, she unleashed a flurry of blows. The boy cowered. Do you know who I am? He shrieked. How dare you treat me like this? Rosalia's expression remained calm. Who are you? She asked. Are you my dad? I don't even know who I am. So how would I know who you are? This completely enraged the boy. He clenched his fist and swung at Rosalia. Just at that critical moment, a red-haired boy in a crimson cloak appeared between them. "Stop it," he said. "You'll only embarrass yourself further." Recognizing the newcomer, the previously furious boy deflated. "What's he doing here?" He wondered. "Does he know this little lunatic? I can't believe the Duke's family, who consider themselves equal to royalty, would associate with such a commoner." Rosalia, however, felt no gratitude for the intervention. "Who are you?" she snapped. "Why are you interfering? Get lost." But the red-haired boy wasn't offended. He found her amusing. "Are you trying to make me laugh?" she asked, bewildered. "Are you crazy?" The red-haired boy grinned. "How interesting," he said. "My hobbies are hunting and appreciating art. What are you barking about? Stop yapping." He chuckled. "You said it was their family who starved the artist to death, right?" he asked, snatching the painting from Rosalia's grasp. "That's right," he continued. "This is something bought with a human life. Might as well burn it clean." By the time the other boy realized what was happening, it was too late. After setting the painting alight, the red-haired boy tossed it aside and turned to Rosalia. "Do you know what hunting and appreciating art have in common?" he asked. "They both possess a tragic beauty, despite the roaring flames nearby." Rosalia stared, transfixed, at the boy before her. Red hair, fire magic, and green eyes. "He's Edmund von Petros from the Crimson Knight family." Realizing who he was, Rosalia trembled and hugged herself, her face falling. Edmund noticed her distress and called out to her, concerned. But as Rosalia stared at the flames behind him, memories from a book she had read flooded her mind. Her vision blurred, and she slipped into unconsciousness, replaced by the false saintess. The young girl was left to beg on the streets to survive. Then, by chance, her fate changed when she became the Duke's adopted daughter. The Duke firmly believed she was his first love child, simply because they shared the same eyes. Back then, Rosalia believed she would grow up healthy and safe under the Duke's care, until she met a red-haired boy. After he used fire magic, Rosalia fell unconscious. In her dream, Rosalia felt flames burning her, making it hard to breathe. "Don't worry, someone will come save us," a voice suddenly said. Hearing the unexpected words, Rosalia opened her eyes and stared in disbelief at the speaker. The person looked exactly like her, except for their eyes. Rosalia then realized who was before her. It was the saintess from the book, and she was currently inside a dream. But why did it hurt so much in a dream? She didn't understand. Just then, Blake rushed into the inferno. Rosalia was overjoyed, thinking he had come to save her. But in the next second, Blake ran past her. At the same time, Edmund, who had also arrived, ran towards the saintess. Rosalia was heartbroken. She wanted them to take her with them, but no one paid her any attention. They left, surrounding the saintess. The pain prevented Rosalia from getting up. She felt so helpless. As the flames burned, the girl screamed. The fire had already taken her appearance. Rosalia knew this was a dream. She wanted to wake up quickly. This was all from that book she had read. What was the book called, anyway? What kind of person was she when she read that book? The question had just surfaced in Rosalia's mind when the pain vanished, and she found herself in an unfamiliar environment, a holy hall where she was alone. Rosalia didn't understand where she was. Just then, a little girl appeared not far from her. When Rosalia saw the girl's face clearly, she was shocked. The little girl was her. A bizarre scene unfolded. The girl looked up. Rosalia's vision began to shake. "No one will come save you," a voice echoed. This made Rosalia abruptly open her eyes, unable to believe what she had just heard. The Duke's concerned voice brought her back to reality. "Mister, you can't kill me," Rosalia blurted out. The Duke was stunned. He recalled their first meeting when he had promised not to kill her. The Duke didn't know what the girl had just gone through. Rosalia's small hand reached out and touched the back of the Duke's hand, not wanting the man who cared for her to let go. Then she closed her eyes. The Duke panicked, yelling for a doctor. Thankfully, Emma's reminder calmed him down. "Your Grace, she's just asleep," Emma said. Looking at the girl's peaceful face, the Duke held her small hand and gently kissed her forehead. "Sweet dreams this time," he whispered. After an unknown amount of time, Rosalia woke up, blinking her eyes, unsure how she had gotten home. She clearly remembered being at the art exhibition. Had it all been a dream? She had argued with the Duke, then met a strange person at the exhibition. Later, a red-haired lunatic had started a fire. And then there was that bizarre dream. Rosalia shuddered. Touching her face, to check for burns. After confirming she was fine, she sighed in relief. But looking at the empty room, had she been left here all alone? Emma then appeared, approaching and checking on Rosalia, who was hiding under the covers like an ostrich. After confirming the girl was all right, Emma explained that Simon had brought her back after she fainted. Are you hungry? Should I get you some cream bread? His Grace would like you to see him after you've eaten. Rosalia was scared, afraid the Duke would scold her. After all, a commoner hitting a noble wasn't something easily overlooked. This time, she might really be abandoned. Lost in thought, Rosalia arrived at the Duke's room. But what she heard next left her stunned. I'm sorry. What happened yesterday was my fault. I was negligent. I'm willing to accept any punishment, even if you banish me from the city. Although he had been surrounded by nobles as soon as he entered the hall, he could have easily excused himself. It wasn't because of them that he hadn't waited for Rosalia. It was because Simon, deep down, hadn't wanted to wait. Rosalia, unaware of the situation, simply thought yesterday's events weren't entirely Simon's fault. Although Simon had initially disliked Rosalia, believing her to be of the Alisa bloodline, he now pleaded, "You're my teacher, who will teach me if you leave. Can't you just not punish me?" The Duke refused his offer. Rosalia was bewildered. She didn't know how to punish someone. After 2.5 minutes of contemplation, the girl pointed her small finger, an idea forming. Then your punishment is you can only eat bell peppers for a month. Despite a commoner assaulting a noble boy, the Duke praised Rosalia for her bravery. As a reward, he took Rosalia out to buy gifts. The girl munched happily on her cookies. After all, this was the first time she had left the Duke's mansion with him. The Duke, however, observed Rosalia with a puzzled expression. No matter how much he tried to nourish her, she always seemed smaller and frilier than other children her age. Lost in her snack, Rosalia absent-mindedly bumped into a man. The Duke quickly caught her small hand. My hands are covered in crumbs and cream, she mumbled. The man, however, didn't seem to mind. He led her towards a doll shop. Just then, they saw the shop owner shove a small beggar aside, spewing a torrent of harsh words. Upon seeing the Duke, the owner's demeanor instantly changed. Then, noticing Rosalia, he began showering her with compliments. Watching the beggar walk away, Rosalia couldn't help but think of her former self. After buying Rosalia a beautiful doll, the Duke prepared to take her home. But then, Rosalia stopped, staring at her reflection in a nearby window. She looked like a princess, just like the doll in her hands. She thought about the real Saintess, and how she would have to leave the Duke when she appeared. Would she still look like this then? She had no way of knowing. Just then, Rosalia's gaze drifted towards the distance. To the Duke's surprise, she suddenly darted off. The little beggar from earlier was huddled in a nearby alleyway. A smile touched Rosalia's lips. The beggar was startled by her sudden appearance. "You wanted this, didn't you?" she asked, holding out something. "But you have to give me your doll." The Duke soon caught up, about to scold her for running off and risking getting lost. But then he noticed the doll in her hand. "I'm sorry," Rosalia said. "I traded the doll you gave me for this one." The Duke was silent for a moment. "As long as you're happy," he finally replied. Rosalia wasn't sure why she had traded dolls with the little girl. She just felt like she had to. Back at the mansion, the Duke and Julian sat awkwardly in front of a table laden with pastries. Rosalia was confused. Why weren't they eating? Julian was about to explain that the Duke didn't have a sweet tooth when the Duke picked up a pastry and took a bite. "It seems your tastes have changed," Julian remarked. "By the way, have you received the letter from Father? The one about adopting Rosalia?" "Yes, I received it," the Duke replied. "I'm surprised he agreed so readily. He was so against it before." Julian looked pleased. The Duke glanced at his nephew. "How did you persuade him?" he asked, taking a sip of his tea. "I simply altered the physician's orders," Julian explained with a smile. "I told him I needed more time to recuperate. About 3 years. I suppose I truly am Father's son. I told him it was my dying wish, and he immediately approved." Despite Julian's smile, the Duke knew he wasn't at ease. If Julian didn't die in 3 years as he'd claimed, the Emperor would surely kill him himself. Only then could his favored eldest son smoothly inherit the throne. "You didn't have to do that," the Duke said. Rosalia, oblivious to the underlying tension, simply urged Julian to eat, concerned about his health. Now that her legal status was resolved, the Duke planned to make the adoption public. He couldn't bear to have anyone taunt her as an orphan any longer. When the Duke asked Rosalia about her birthday, she was bewildered. "I don't know," she replied. "What's a birthday?" Resigned, the Duke decided to make the day of her official adoption her birthday. He planned a grand party and invited numerous guests. "So, will you be my father now?" Rosalia asked. The words were on the tip of her tongue, but she couldn't bring herself to say them. She shook her head. You're still just you, she decided. Once again, the Duke was left feeling a little helpless. He simply let her have her way. Suddenly, Rosalia remembered the cookies Ramirez had given her. She hadn't eaten them yet. If you leave them too long, they'll go bad, Julian said with a smile. I'll make you something even tastier. Just throw those cookies away, he added. Rosalia was taken aback. She thought Julian had sounded rather stern, even though he was smiling. Over the next 2 weeks, the Duke's mansion bustled with preparations for Rosalia's birthday party. Rosalia lay listlessly in bed, feeling a pang of sadness at the thought of Julian not attending her party. He had been smiling when he told her, but he hadn't looked happy at all. Just then, a maid appeared, informing Rosalia that she would be attending to her in Emma's place, as Emma was busy with the party preparations. Rosalia was puzzled, but expressed her desire to play in the gardens. Although the maid's face remained impassive, she trembled slightly. She wondered when the young miss would reveal her true nature. The reason for her apprehension. The Duke had simply said, I think she's quite nice, and adopted her. Furthermore, when they returned from their outing, Rosalia had clutched a dirty doll she'd picked up from a rubbish heap. The maids were convinced it was a cursed doll. Although Emma insisted the Duke had adopted Rosalia out of affection, it all seemed very strange. I think His Grace must be under some kind of spell, one maid had whispered to another. Maya, you must be careful. We have to survive. Adopted by the villainous Duke, the maids believed the girl had cast a terrible curse upon him. They vowed to survive in his clutches, but only if they remained vigilant. Maya, could you bring me a bag for these cookies? Thank you, Maya. You're the best. Rosalia's innocent request charmed Maya completely. Looking at Rosalia's sweet face, Maya thought she was utterly adorable. Then, Rosalia presented another maid, Dorothy, with a drawing, whispering, this will be worth a fortune in 10 years. I was going to keep it for myself, but I wanted to give it to you. Dorothy was instantly captivated. Completely charmed by Rosalia, the maids fussed over her. 2.5 days flew by, and the day of the birthday party arrived in a blink. Due to the religious order's influence, the royal family didn't attend. Neither did the Valencia family. Invitations have been extended to the other 3 ducal families. However, in a magnificent ballroom, the Duke escorted Rosalia down the grand staircase. But hearing the guests whispering about how little she resembled the Duke, Rosalia panicked. Trembling, she couldn't utter a word. Just then, she noticed a raised hand below. It was Simon, reminding her to look at her hand. Anticipating her nervousness, Rosalia had written her speech on her palm, but her excessive perspiration had smudged the words. Swallowing hard, she stammered out her opening remarks. First, I want to thank everyone for coming. After she finished, silence descended upon the ballroom. Simon broke out in a cold sweat. This was a disaster. Then, the Duke began to clap, breaking the awkward silence. After a moment's hesitation, the other guests joined in. The Duke led Rosalia down the remaining steps. Did I do something wrong? She worried. The Duke reassured her that the party was for her, and she could do as she pleased. Hearing this, Rosalia brightened. As she wandered through the ballroom, a voice called out from behind. Lady Valencia, a girl said, I'm Sophia. Happy birthday. You're so pretty. You look like you were born a noble. You too, Rosalia replied. Sophia, taken aback by the unexpected compliment, was momentarily speechless. Recovering, she revealed her purpose. Daniel has been devastated because of you. He's never been the same. You seem quite happy, though. Rosalia had no idea who this Daniel was. Daniel is my cousin. He's the young master of the family that sponsored the art exhibition. Realizing Sophia was referring to the boy she'd punched, Rosalia's eyes widened. She couldn't understand why the girl was bringing him up. His family is ruined. You hit Daniel, but you weren't punished. Don't you think that's unfair? Rosalia didn't see anything unfair about it. After all, Daniel had admitted his family had killed someone and had been insulting her. You should understand, Sophia continued. We are nobles, and they are mere commoners. We were being charitable just by giving them scraps to eat. You used to be a commoner too, right? No wonder you were angry when we insulted the commoners. You were one of them not long ago. As Sophia continued her taunts, a wild boar suddenly crashed into the room behind her. Screams filled the ballroom. It's your birthday. Why are you all alone? Rosalia was bewildered to see Edmund standing there. She'd heard he was confined to his quarters. Edmund had come to deliver a birthday present, the wild boar. His logic was questionable. You're like a wild boar yourself, Rosalia retorted. Only a wild boar would be so reckless. And I'm not alone. When she turned back, Sophia was gone. Annoyed by Edmund's presence, Rosalia wanted nothing to do with him. He then asked if she had a dance partner, hoping to share a first dance. Rosalia flatly refused and turned to leave. As she did, Edmund grabbed her wrist. "I need to talk to you about last time." Before he could finish, a hand landed on his shoulder. "I specifically told Duke Petros to keep his son under control. What are you doing to my daughter?" It was the Duke. Edmund struggled against the Duke's grip. "Throw him in the dungeon. Don't let him out until the party's over." Rosalia was exasperated. Just then, Simon approached the Duke, needing to discuss something urgent. The Duke patted Rosalia's head, promising to return shortly, and followed Simon out of the ballroom. "So busy," Rosalia sighed. A boy wearing a cat mask approached. It was Blake. "Happy birthday, Rosalia. Have you kept the brooch safe?" Relieved to hear she hadn't lost it, Blake explained it was very important to him. Then, to Rosalia's surprise, he took her hand and pulled her into a hug. "You know how to dance, right? Would you dance with me?" Rosalia didn't want to agree, but Blake pulled her onto the dance floor. When the music ended, the knights who had been waiting swooped in and whisked Blake away. Rosalia found their behavior a bit much, but everything that day felt new and exciting. It was the first time she'd been the center of attention, the first time she'd received birthday wishes. A feeling of pure happiness enveloped her. She thought, perhaps naively, that this happiness would last forever. But danger was already lurking. For her first birthday as a noble, the little beggar girl received 2 Pegasus. Rosalia was astonished. The other guests were equally surprised that the Duke would bestow such extravagant gifts. They marveled at the extent of his wealth. Rosalia, barely containing her excitement, clambered onto one of the Pegasus' backs. Then she noticed a familiar figure in the crowd. She struggled to place him, a nagging feeling that she'd seen him before. The Pegasus spread its wings and lifted into the air. Tethered by ropes, it couldn't fly too high. Unaware of the impending danger, Rosalia gazed at the scenery below, oblivious to the growing agitation of her mount. Suddenly, the Pegasus shrieked, snapping the ropes. It soared into the distance. The Duke was stunned. Simon had warned him of signs of intrusion, but he hadn't anticipated a problem here. Just then, Julian arrived, leaping onto the back of the other Pegasus. The Duke started to protest, but it was too late. Julian was already airborne, pursuing Rosalia. Rosalia trembled, her eyes wide with terror. Julian caught up, shouting for her to grab his hand. After a moment of hesitation, fear overriding her distrust, Rosalia reached for him. But just as her fingers brushed his wrist, both Pegasus shrieked again, throwing them from their backs. Rosalia plummeted, panic seizing her. Julian wrapped his arms around her, bracing for impact. A sickening thud echoed through the air. A splash of crimson stained the ground around them. Rosalia was still conscious, but pain choked off any cry. She saw Julian lying unconscious beside her. She knew she couldn't lose consciousness. She had to do something, anything, but she was helpless. As darkness closed in, she could only pray for Julian's safety. A brilliant, holy light flashed when Rosalia opened her eyes again. She found herself in an unfamiliar place, surrounded by books. Her body felt light, free from pain. Was this the afterlife? But why only books? A moment later, confusion washed over her. The scene felt strangely familiar. Footsteps echoed behind her. When she turned, there was no one there. Yet the footsteps continued. She followed the sound. Peeking around a corner, she saw 4 small ghosts. Startled by her presence, they chattered excitedly, demanding to know how she dared return. But this was Rosalia's first time here. As the angry ghosts spoke in a language she shouldn't understand, Rosalia found she could comprehend their words. "You're saying a silver-haired human came here and damaged a book, and you're repairing it." Her curiosity piqued. She looked at the book at their feet. She picked it up. The ghosts tried to stop her, but their spectral hands passed right through her arm. There are water stains. So many words are smudged. "Cordelia, should I kill Julian?" Even the royal family is under his thumb. Seeing Julian's name, Rosalia thought of the boy lying in a pool of blood. Why would this book say Cordelia wanted to kill him? Then, to her astonishment, the ghosts claimed they had written the book. Before she could ask why, an unseen force yanked her backward. Helpless, she watched the ghosts shrink into the distance. The Duke's voice called her name. Her eyes fluttered open. "Rosalia, you're finally awake." She looked at the Duke's anxious face. "Am I not dead?" She wondered. Don't say such ominous things. You've been unconscious for 2.5 days. Do you know how worried I was? It's all my fault. I shouldn't have given you something so dangerous. Listening to the Duke's self-reproach, Rosalia felt compelled to comfort him. Uncle, I'm fine, and I want to thank you. I've never received birthday wishes from anyone before. If it weren't for you, I might never have experienced something like this. I wouldn't have beautiful clothes to wear or delicious food to eat. The best gift in my life is you. By the way, how is Julian? From the Duke, Rosalia learned of Julian's current condition. While a fall from that height would normally break bones and rupture internal organs, leading to instant death, Julian didn't die. He doesn't even have a scratch. Hearing this, Rosalia's face lit up with relief. Then, she expressed her curiosity about Julian's lack of injuries. After all, she had seen the blood beneath him. It was certainly strange. He's currently undergoing examinations to see if the curse has worsened. The royal family's curse is different. It feeds on the host's life force to sustain itself. Since that day, Julian's episodes have become more frequent. He craves blood from time to time. In short, his curse seems to be getting worse. Rosalia couldn't help but worry about Julian. As she recuperated, a mechanical bird flew into her bedroom, carrying an ice blue rose in its beak. The little beggar girl's first gift had nearly cost her life. Thankfully, the young boy had risked his life to save her. Although Julian hadn't died, the curse within him had intensified, turning him into a bloodthirsty demon. Rosalia was worried for him, but the slightest movement caused her excruciating pain. She couldn't go see him. During this time, she also learned that Daniel had tampered with the Pegasus. Overwhelmed by the pressure, he had eventually confessed. Rosalia recalled that day. If Julian hadn't shielded her with his body, she would surely have perished. Just then, a noise outside the window interrupted her thoughts. A mechanical bird perched on the windowsill, an ice blue rose clutched in its beak. As it flew towards her, Rosalia noticed a piece of paper tied to its leg. Unfolding it, she read, "Rosalia, I heard you woke up, so I wanted to write you a letter. I really want to see you, but due to some circumstances, I can't see you at the moment. This flower is a gift for you. Thank you for becoming a member of the Valencia family. Next time, I'll give you a rose just like you. Also, if you wind up this little bird, he'll fly back to me." Although the letter wasn't signed from the very first line, Rosalia knew who had written it. She couldn't help but think how handsome Julian was. Even his handwriting was beautiful. Just as Rosalia prepared to reply, she was frustrated by the small size of the paper, worried it wouldn't be big enough for everything she wanted to say. But there was nothing she could do. After finishing her reply, she wound the bird's spring, letting it fly back on its own. Rosalia not only wrote him a letter, but also spent 2.5 days creating a painting for Julian. Days passed, and Rosalia gradually recovered. Then, the return of an unexpected guest disrupted the tranquility. It was the Duke's younger brother, Lorenzo. He had already learned that his aloof older brother had taken in an adopted daughter. He immediately went to the Duke's room. "Brother, I heard Julian's condition worsened after he was out of danger. Don't worry. He's like his mother, a strong child." The Duke interrupted him. Julian is only his sister's child, not his sister herself, and his craving for blood is intensifying with time. When even beasts can no longer satisfy his desires, his target will become humans. All right, go see him first. You need to examine him yourself before making a diagnosis. Lorenzo, however, declined the Duke's suggestion. "Before that, I have something more important to do. I need to see Rosalia, who's dressed up as a rabbit." Hearing that, her uncle wanted to see her. Rosalia pouted angrily. "Brother, look." Rosalia seems unhappy. Rosalia immediately protested. "I'm already 8 years old. 8-year-olds don't wear clothes like this." But her protest was in vain. Lorenzo was completely charmed by her. He approached her, wanting Rosalia to call him uncle, but the girl wouldn't agree. After all, she only called the Duke uncle. Disappointed, Lorenzo squatted in the corner, counting ants. The Duke reminded his brother to be mindful of the time and go see Julian. "Are you going to see Julian? Can I go too?" Before Rosalia could finish, Lorenzo refused. "Julian is very ill right now. Only doctors can see him." Rosalia looked down at the floor, disappointed. She asked Lorenzo to tell her about Julian's condition when he returned. Julian hadn't written to her recently, and she was starting to worry. But as night fell, Lorenzo didn't come to see her. Rosalia pouted again. Rosalia, picking up a piece of charcoal, prepared to exact her revenge on the sleeping Lorenzo. She planned to decorate his face. Walking down the quiet corridor, she heard whispers coming from the Duke's room, piquing her curiosity. Just as she reached for the doorknob, the voices from within made her pause. "You're saying Rosalia isn't the saintess. If you ignore her eyes, she's the spitting image of the missing Christiane. They look exactly alike. Someone might even believe Duke Elisa has been turned into a little girl. But you're telling me Rosalia isn't the saintess. So, has she undergone the Emperor's examination? The man clearly didn't want to hear the Emperor mentioned, urging Lorenzo to drop the subject. You only recognize the resemblance because of your keen eye. Besides you, only Duke Elisa would connect her to Rosalia. Besides, she rarely appears in social circles, so no one else would notice. Lorenzo remained puzzled. Even if Rosalia isn't the saintess, judging by her appearance, she's undoubtedly the daughter of Duke Elisa and Rosalind. Silence fell over the room. Rosalia touched her cheek, wondering if she truly resembled this Christiane. But why wasn't this mentioned in the book? Are you planning to use her? Even if the saintess is someone else, she's still Rosalind's daughter. We can have Rosalia impersonate the saintess to buy us time. Besides, Julian has suffered a severe shock and is truly on borrowed time. Even if a miracle occurs and he recovers, you'll eventually have to choose between them, either Rosalia or Julian. But it seems you've already made your choice. The girl adopted by the villainous Duke overheard that the boy who saved her was dying. A wave of guilt washed over Rosalia. In the book of the future she'd read, Julian hadn't died so young. She blamed herself for everything. As she turned to go back to her room, Lorenzo heard the movement. Suspecting eavesdropping, he stepped out into the hallway but found no one there. As he turned to go back inside, he spotted the charcoal Rosalia had dropped. When the Duke questioned him, Lorenzo rubbed the back of his head and claimed he'd misheard something. Back in her bedroom, Rosalia hugged herself, replaying the conversation she'd overheard. After some time, she realized the charcoal was gone. Suddenly, the door opened. Startled, Rosalia quickly scrambled into bed and feigned sleep. Hearing the door close, she assumed the person had left. Just as she breathed a sigh of relief, she saw Lorenzo standing beside her bed. You should keep better track of your things. Don't let your guard down. You have to be meticulous, leaving no trace, if you want to turn the tables and become the hunter. Listening to Lorenzo's cryptic words, Rosalia clutched the blankets, realizing he knew she'd been eavesdropping. The next morning at breakfast, the Duke noticed Rosalia's unusual behavior. Normally, she would have devoured everything on the table by now. To avoid suspicion, Rosalia forced herself to eat, her gaze fixed on Lorenzo across from her. Looks like Rosalia really likes me. Well, I'm quite handsome after all. Rosalia was speechless at his narcissism. As Lorenzo prepared to leave for Julian's villa, he found Rosalia waiting for him. Did you tell Uncle about me eavesdropping last night? Hoping to build rapport with Rosalia, Lorenzo admitted he hadn't. Since we share a secret now, how about you and Uncle become friends? Rosalia flatly refused. However, she reconsidered if he would take her to see Julian. This put Lorenzo in a difficult position. Didn't you say he was dying? Just let me see him. Looking at Rosalia's determined expression, Lorenzo finally relented. All right, Rosalia, you're Julian's family too. Let's go. But if you feel like running away, tell me immediately. This confused Rosalia. Arriving at Julian's villa, Rosalia smelled a peculiar mix of candle wax and blood. Entering Julian's room, she saw the boy lunging towards her, his limbs bound by chains. His red eyes held no trace of emotion. Julian could no longer even speak, and even though his older brother had earnestly warned him, he still disregarded his own health and recklessly used his ice magic. He even froze everything around him. That's why his curse worsened. Rosalia now understood that the blue rose Julian had sent her was created with his magic. Aren't you family? If you're family, how can you treat him like this? In Rosalia's mind, family should always be unconditionally on your side, for someone who cries for them. Rosalia couldn't understand. Why were the Duke and the others treating the boy who had saved her this way? But she didn't know this was at Julian's request. He wanted to protect innocent people. Perhaps this was the only way for Julian to retain a shred of his humanity until the very end. But it was too cruel for Rosalia. After all, Julian had promised to give her blue roses next year. Rosalia, you have to understand, there are no blue roses in the world. Rosalia fell silent. Julian had said he would give her blue roses, something that didn't exist in this world, and his promise could have several interpretations. Perhaps he would find a way to make the impossible possible. Or perhaps he wouldn't have the chance to give her a birthday present next year. Throwing the doll in her hand to Lorenzo, Rosalia picked up the small, broken bird Julian had destroyed. She now understood why he hadn't written to her recently. Looking at Julian before her, Rosalia remembered what he had said when he saved her. She involuntarily reached out her hand, but in the next second, the boy grabbed her hand tightly. His scarlet eyes were piercing. Gritting his teeth, he squeezed her hand hard. "Julian, you will greet this world tomorrow morning, because I will find a way to cure you." Reacting quickly, Lorenzo scooped Rosalia up and carried her out. Rosalia quietly watched the boy inside until the door closed, leaving behind the boy who had lost his humanity. A few days earlier, when Julian woke up, the first thing he did was ask about Rosalia. Hearing from the Duke that she was all right, he finally felt relieved. As the sun began to set, not wanting Rosalia to worry about him, Julian found paper and a pen to write her a letter. Looking at the bloodstains on the paper, Julian realized this wasn't the first time he'd regained consciousness. Meanwhile, back at the Duke's mansion, Lorenzo immediately bandaged Rosalia's hand. The Duke rushed in, scolding his younger brother. After a long silence, Rosalia spoke. "Uncle, I want to go back to where I used to live." Rosalia wanted to return to the place mentioned in the book as the Saintess's location. She believed the only way to save Julian was with the Saintess's divine power. But the Duke misunderstood, thinking she was afraid. "The villa is heavily guarded. He definitely won't be able to run to the main city like last time. I'm not afraid of Julian." The Duke looked at Rosalia in silence, recalling how Lorenzo had mentioned someone eavesdropping outside the door last night. Lost in thought, he finally said, "All right, I understand what you're thinking. You should rest now." He then turned and left. The Duke didn't want Rosalia to go back. After bringing her to the mansion, he had personally dealt with the woman who deserved to be cut into 1,000 pieces, and he had helped the other children start new lives. But he didn't know how much Rosalia loathed that woman. He assumed Rosalia would resent him, believing she had nowhere else to go. As the sun set, Rosalia packed her things. She knew the Duke wouldn't agree to her leaving like this. Even if she told him she knew where the Saintess was from the book, he wouldn't believe her. Adults never listen to children. Besides, Rosalia didn't want to see the Duke try to persuade her to stay. She didn't really want to leave, but to save Julian, she had to go. After setting the repaired bird free, she slowly fashioned a rope from her clothes, intending to climb down from the balcony. Just as she threw the rope down, the bird flew back. A scream echoed from below. Rosalia was bewildered. She saw Lorenzo looking at the rope in his hand with a puzzled expression. Noticing Rosalia on the balcony, Lorenzo understood what she was trying to do. "You were going to climb down using this. I bet this would have snapped with one tug. Just wait there. I'll come up to you." Rosalia was exasperated that Lorenzo had found her. She wondered what he was up to now. "My little niece is playing such a dangerous game by the window. How could I not come?" After making him promise not to tell, Rosalia prepared to leave. But when Lorenzo mentioned that the Duke would worry if she disappeared, Rosalia paused. She thought about the Duke's concern for her. She insisted he wouldn't worry about her. "Then let's confirm. What will my brother's reaction be if you disappear? I'll help you run away." After 2.5 hours of preparation, Lorenzo and Rosalia were ready to leave. He told her this was the safest way. Rosalia just wanted to punch him. Just then, they bumped into the Duke. "Where are you going?" he asked. "And what is this bundle?" Inside the bundle was Rosalia. Hearing Lorenzo say it was a gift for a friend, the Duke didn't think much of it. Thinking Rosalia wanted to return to the slums, he felt he hadn't done enough. Lorenzo noticed the Duke's change and asked him how he planned to treat Rosalia. "I want to tell her slowly," the Duke replied, "so she won't be hurt. I can't hide the truth from her forever." Sitting in the moving carriage, Rosalia finally poked her head out. "Rosalia, did you hear that? Do you still want to leave?" Lorenzo asked. The girl gave him a firm nod. It was all for Julian. According to the book, that day was supposed to be when the Saintess found the Duke. After saving him with her divine power, she officially became the Saintess. Later, while doing charity work, she returned to the alley and found Rosalia. The orphan Saintess, like Rosalia, also lived in that alley. They had been living close to each other without knowing it. Just then, Lorenzo suddenly gathered up the blanket, interrupting Rosalia's thoughts. But upon returning to the place she once lived, Rosalia was stunned. Despite being adopted by the Duke and living a life of luxury, the girl still wanted to return to the slums to search for the Saintess mentioned in the book. It was all because she had overheard that Julian, the boy who saved her, was dying. Only the Saintess's divine power could lift the curse on him. But when she returned to the alley, the residents all said there was no silver-haired girl her age named Cordelia living there. Rosalia didn't know what to do next. Those who collected protection money had designated territories, and the children in the alley wouldn't leave their assigned areas for fear of being beaten by the local gangs. If she couldn't find the Saintess, then her return was pointless. But she remembered the uncle mentioned in the book, and Julian, Blake, and Edmund. They were all exactly as described in the book. But why hadn't the Saintess appeared? She had no way of knowing. While searching for the girl Rosalia described, Lorenzo discovered that the gang in Rosalia's old alley had vanished overnight. The timing of their disappearance coincided with the day Rosalia was taken away. Lorenzo didn't tell Rosalia about this, suspecting it was the Duke's doing. Just then, Lorenzo suddenly noticed something and immediately scooped Rosalia up and ran. Rosalia also saw the person behind them. The Duke, his face grim. After discovering Rosalia was missing, the Duke had rushed over immediately. He never expected his younger brother to be so treacherous. After running for a while, Lorenzo finally slowed down, seeing the Duke was no longer in sight. "You said he wouldn't look for you. Looks like I was right. Your brother was very worried. You saw how fiercely he chased us," Lorenzo said. Rosalia lowered her head. She still believed in the book she had read. If the Saintess existed, wouldn't everything be different? She wondered. Looking at Rosalia, Lorenzo recalled an ancient text he had read. "The Saintess's blood is like wine, her eyes like jewels. Consuming her flesh and blood will make one perfect." But it's too early to talk about that now. If you were the Saintess, you could certainly solve many problems for the Duke. But that's not your concern, Lorenzo said. So you don't have to worry about it. Just live as you please. Just be yourself. Rosalia didn't understand why he was saying these things to her. But when Lorenzo ruffled her hair playfully, Rosalia got angry and grabbed his hair, refusing to let go. Just then, they heard two knights asking passersby if they had seen them. Lorenzo recognized them immediately as knights of the Elisa family. News of the Duke wandering around Elisa territory had reached Duke Elisa's ears. After 2.5 minutes of contemplation, Rosalia decided to return to the Duke. "Didn't you say you wanted to go back to where you used to live?" Lorenzo asked. "Uncle misses me that much. What can I do?" "As the one and only Rosalia in the world, of course I have to go to him," she replied. Although she hadn't found Cordelia, it meant she could stay a little longer. Even if it was just for a moment, Rosalia was willing. She just wanted to return to the place where she was loved. As Rosalia followed Lorenzo, preparing to go back, she was lost in thought. When she reached out and grabbed the clothes of the man in front of her, she realized it wasn't Lorenzo. Rosalia was stunned, standing there alone. They had lost each other. "Honestly, he's so grown up, and yet he disappears the moment I take my eyes off him," Lorenzo muttered. Meanwhile, Rosalia's stomach rumbled. Arriving at a small stall, she took out Blake's brooch, hoping to trade it for a crepe. Seeing what she offered, the stall owner was startled and immediately handed Rosalia a stack of crepes. Then she asked the girl, "Are you lost?" It seemed obvious. "You're clearly a young lady from the Duke's house, yet you have no attendants, just wandering around alone. Here, have some cookies while I find a knight to help you." Rosalia, unaware that the owner had mistaken her identity, assumed she was referring to the Valencia family. Seeing the Elisa family carriage before her, Rosalia hesitated. But remembering that the Duke might have already met with Duke Elisa, she was no longer afraid. The stall owner returned the brooch she had taken earlier. Although Rosalia didn't understand why she wouldn't accept it, to thank her for the help, Rosalia offered one of her treasured jewels. When Rosalia arrived at her destination in the carriage, she realized the mansion before her wasn't her home. Had she been tricked? "You must be the rumored Valencia maid. Welcome to Ram's Castle." Seeing the man's resemblance to Blake, Rosalia was bewildered. She immediately demanded to go back, but Duke Ramps informed her that Duke Valencia had caused a disturbance in Elisa territory and had been arrested. "It's best you don't return to Elisa territory now. If they learn you're the Valencia maid, they'll certainly be interested in you. They might even use you as an excuse to detain you. I've already contacted Duke Valencia and told him you're here." Rosalia didn't understand what he was planning. Just then, Blake arrived. He was surprised to see Rosalia. Duke Ramps was displeased by his eldest son's arrival. He had summoned Everett, not Blake. But with the situation as it was, Duke Ramps didn't press the matter further, instructing Blake to entertain Rosalia. "Valencia maid, since you're here, I hope you'll become good friends with my sons." Rosalia understood Duke Ramps's intention. He believed she was the Saintess. Being on good terms with the Saintess would surely prove useful eventually. When Blake brought Rosalia to her room, The long silent boy finally spoke his mind. I thought you were dying. Even after hearing you were all right, I was constantly worried. I've been thinking about you every day. Rosalia was puzzled by his concern. After all, they weren't close. She then took out Blake's brooch. I didn't know this brooch was important to you. I don't need it anymore. Seeing Blake didn't react, Rosalia sighed. She didn't want to get too involved with him. She thought, when the real saintess appears, you'll be the first to turn your back. I don't need someone so opportunistic, especially someone so blinded by love that they'd put others in mortal danger. Knowing the girl was the Duke's maid, Everett mocked her doll, calling it trash picked from a garbage heap. Rosalia wasn't going to coddle him just because he was young. Look in a mirror before you speak, she retorted. But the pampered boy didn't understand. So he used to live in a filthy place. He initially thought the Duke wasn't so great, bringing home a lowborn stray cat. But now, learning she came from a dirty place, he found the Duke rather admirable. Hearing the boy call her a lowborn stray cat, Rosalia was furious. She ignored Duke Rams's attempt to excuse his son's words as childish innocence. You're right. I used to live in an alley. You can't imagine how dirty it was. I drank from fountains, unsure if someone had spat in them, and begged for scraps of meat left on bones. But so what? Just because I'm different from you, born an orphan, should I be despised? But do you know what's even more disgusting? It's you, looking at me like I'm some strange insect. Do you pity me? How laughable. You said you wanted to get along, but you looked down on me. The final straw for Everett was Blake's comment. You kept whining about wanting to see Rosalia. Was it just to say these things? As soon as he finished speaking, Everett burst into tears and ran from the dining room. Duke Ramps, finding the situation tiresome, warned Blake before leaving, "You're the older brother. You should set an example for your younger brother." He then left the dining room as well. Blake had clearly had enough of his family. Looking at the dejected boy, Rosalia said, "You said you liked that I didn't cry, right? They cry because they think it solves their problems. And the reason I don't cry is because I know my tears are meaningless. So I'm not worth your liking at all. It's not that I think people who cry are stupid. If I also had adults around who would only comfort me and not scold me, then I wouldn't hold back my tears either. You also said you don't like children, but you should know we're both children now. Well, I'm leaving. You can relax and eat now." Watching Rosalia's retreating figure, Blake sat in silence for a long while. But no one here treats me like a child. When Rosalia returned to her bedroom, she lay on the bed, clutching her stomach. The rich food of the past few days had upset her stomach, and she couldn't help but miss the Duke. Rosalia felt like something was missing. After 2.5 minutes of contemplation, she remembered her doll, left behind in the dining room. Just as she was about to go look for it, a maid informed her that Blake had it, and that she should find him in the courtyard. Although she didn't understand what the boy was up to, Rosalia obediently went to the courtyard. From a distance, she saw Blake sitting in a chair, dozing off. Rosalia approached and shook him awake. The startled boy grabbed her wrist and pulled her closer. "Your eyes are like blue morpho butterflies. Do you still hate me?" Rosalia, clearly oblivious to Blake's strange affection, said coldly, "I'll hate you forever." She wrenched her hand free, wanted it all back. "Sit here for a moment. I'll give it back to you. By the way, why did you run away from home?" "No reason." "What happened to your hand?" "Nothing." "Why do you hate me?" "Because you're annoying." Blake panicked, about to explain it wasn't his fault, but Rosalia interrupted. "Let me ask you, if someone says they'll give you a blue rose, which doesn't exist in this world, what does it mean?" In Blake's mind, nothing was truly impossible in this world. Technology was always advancing. Maybe one day, biorobots will be commonplace. And blue roses were the same. Humans would eventually cultivate them. Rosalia recalled Julian's letter. Could this be what he meant too? Dismissing the thought, Rosalia reached for her doll. Blake clearly wasn't ready to give up. As he spoke, he grabbed her hand again. "If I cried for you, would you look back at me?" Rosalia shuddered. She was speechless at such a display of childish affection from a boy his age. "Whether you cry or laugh, even if you take off your pants and dance, it's none of my business. I won't be friends with you or Everett." She rapped him on the head. "And if you're going to cry for someone, save it for your family or someone you truly care about." Just as she finished speaking, someone's arrival interrupted them. It was the Duke. "What are you doing to my daughter? I heard my daughter was your honored guest, but you dare to press your forehead against her arm." Seeing his daughter seemingly taken advantage of, the Duke wanted to relegate the boy to cleaning toilets. Hearing the Duke's concerned words, Rosalia was overjoyed. "Did you defeat them? Did you think I would lose?" As he spoke, the Duke scooped her into his arms. "Duke, I want to go home." As they were about to board the carriage, Lorenzo came running. Second brother, you're going to leave me alone in that devil's den. That's too much. Meanwhile, having received news of the Duke's arrival, Duke Ramps also appeared with his entourage. We treated the Valencia maid with the utmost hospitality. Shouldn't you thank us? Still fuming, the Duke glared and blatantly lied. My daughter has been starved to skin and bones these past 2 days. I'll never let Rosalia come here again. That's not for certain. Friends can always visit each other, just like I used to be friends with Ingrid. Seeing Everett peek out, Rosalia quickly asked the Duke to put her down. She wanted to say goodbye before leaving. Although puzzled by her sudden friendship, the Duke set her down. I'm very unhappy to see you. Let's never meet again. Lorenzo snorted. Is that how you say goodbye? Of course. Or am I farting? Blake approached with Rosalia's doll. Rosalia, here you go. See you next time. He kissed her cheek. Sitting in the carriage, Rosalia was still stunned. The Duke, face thunderous, looked ready to chop the boy up and feed him to the chickens. By the way, I've been worried about the child you were looking for, so I went back to look again. But he's really gone. Rosalia's face fell. She didn't understand why everyone else was exactly as described in the book, but not him. But why was the protagonist the only one missing? Cordelia, who are you really? Rosalia was pondering how to cure Julian when Lorenzo informed her that the boy had already recovered. Although they hadn't confirmed it with their own eyes, Rosalia couldn't understand his sudden recovery. After all, the book stated that Julian's curse had taken even the Saintess a considerable amount of time to heal. With a blink, they were back at Valencia Castle, thanks to teleportation magic. As Rosalia stepped down from the carriage, she immediately spotted a familiar figure. Rosalia, come quickly. I've been waiting for you. Arriving at the familiar dining hall, Lorenzo was also puzzled by the medical report Julian had brought. After all, every time Julian had an episode after meeting Rosalia, it was worse than the last. Seeing how quiet Rosalia was, the Duke assumed she was exhausted from the past few days and told her to go rest. As Rosalia left the dining hall, Lorenzo followed her. I know this request is rather strange, but could I draw some of your blood? Hearing the words draw blood, Rosalia instantly recalled her experiences at the orphanage. Lorenzo's request stemmed from his desire to confirm whether Rosalia was the Saintess. After all, Julian's curse had been temporarily suppressed by just a touch of Rosalia's blood. If the results were positive, they might be able to conceal the truth prematurely and declare Rosalia as the Saintess. Aware of Rosalia's past, Lorenzo awkwardly considered retracting his suggestion, but Rosalia agreed. My right arm is used more often. I prefer you draw blood from my left arm. Is that all right? Looking at the girl extending her arm, Lorenzo was speechless but didn't hesitate any further. They went to the living room to draw blood, but as the needle pierced her arm, Rosalia froze, unresponsive to Lorenzo's calls. Seeing her pupils dilate, Lorenzo quickly nudged her. Rosalia snapped back to reality. After a brief pause, Lorenzo ultimately gave up and ushered her back to her room. He then closed the door, leaving Rosalia speechless. Although she had run away from the orphanage because she hated having her blood drawn, here, Rosalia felt it truly didn't matter. She had finally returned to her own home. Just then, the small, injured bird appeared in her room again. After reading the message written on the paper it carried, the girl rushed out. It was a note from Julian, waiting for you in the courtyard. Late at night, Julian was delighted to see Rosalia. I thought you wouldn't come. Why? Because you've been avoiding me. I didn't mean to. Are you feeling better? After assuring her that he was fine, Julian invited her for a walk. As they strolled through the quiet courtyard, Rosalia asked, "Is it really all right for you to be out here like this?" Julian had already received the Duke's permission, and there were many knights around, ensuring Rosalia's safety. That's not what I'm worried about. Julian still misunderstood Rosalia. He thought she had run away from home because she had been frightened of him back then. But Rosalia had never been afraid of him. The Saintess was the root of all her misfortunes. Yet, she had still sought out the Saintess, Cordelia, all for the sake of curing Julian. Rosalia didn't want to tell him about Cordelia, because Julian would eventually fall for her. Just as Rosalia was lamenting her own childish thoughts, Julian draped his cloak over her shoulders. You always seem to get hurt because of me. I'm sorry. Startled by Julian's sudden gesture, Rosalia quickly pulled her arm back, blushing as she insisted it wasn't his fault. She was the one who hadn't listened to Lorenzo and insisted on getting close to him. As Rosalia tried to return the cloak, Julian refused. Watching the snake tattoo on his neck move, Rosalia was amused. Whenever I stare at it, it stops moving, That snake is quite perceptive. Walking through the quiet night, Julian asked Rosalia about her experiences over the past few days. The girl omitted the entire middle portion, but she did mention how happy she was to have bought food with her own money for the first time. However, when she mentioned Ram's castle, Julian's tone changed. It seems you and Blake get along well. Rosalia mistakenly thought he was worried she had stolen his only friend. She quickly reassured him, explaining they were merely acquaintances, not friends. When Julian asked if Blake had said anything special to her, Rosalia immediately recalled the afternoon's events. She didn't understand what Blake had been doing. Seeing Rosalia's silence, Julian considered how both Duke Ramps and Blake seemed interested in her. That was why he hadn't allowed the Duke to extend an invitation to them. But Blake still showed up, and he came on his own. Julian felt a pang of displeasure at Blake's unusual attention towards Rosalia. Even though your birthday has passed, may I have this dance? Rosalia didn't understand why he would make such a request, but she agreed nonetheless. Slipping off her shoes, Rosalia stepped in front of Julian, gently placing her hand in his. Moonlight bathed them, though they lacked elegant attire, melodious music, and a dazzling ballroom. They danced happily for a long time on their moonlit stage, under the dim moonlight. After Julian promised to attend her birthday party next year, Rosalia, lost in the moment, failed to notice the onset of his curse. He suddenly pulled her close, draping his cloak around her. It doesn't matter if you don't give me blue roses, she thought, as long as you can be with me that day. As dawn broke, and night gave way to morning, Rosalia was fast asleep. I survived another day. Just like you said, I will greet many more tomorrows. It's because of you that I've held on. Thank you, Rosalia. But his hand, moving involuntarily, tightened around her throat. The true saintess, yet deceived. She had always wanted to escape, driven by the words of an unknown book that foretold her being thrown into a fiery pit executed by the Duke's orders. But reality had taken a different turn. Adopted by the Duke, Rosalia reveled in her peaceful and happy life. Waking up the next morning, Rosalia was oblivious to the previous night's events. Fortunately, Julian had regained control, having a knight escort her back to her room. Listening to Emma's fussing and concern, Rosalia felt no annoyance. But when she mentioned that Blake hadn't cast a sweet dream spell on her, but had kissed her cheek instead, Emma's expression remained neutral, but her voice turned icy. Next time you see him, kick him hard in the groin. Also, the sweet dream spell is a parent's love for their child. Does that mean I'll never be able to cast that spell? Rosalia's sudden question stunned Emma. She then asked Rosalia if she had slept well after she had cast the sweet dream spell on her. Receiving an affirmative answer, Emma explained, that means the spell worked. From the moment I met you, I've considered you my own daughter. But you can't cast the spell on just anyone. It's only for family. Soon after, the Duke took Rosalia, who had just finished breakfast, for a walk. When she asked about Julian, the Duke said he was at the villa, not seriously ill, just a bit of cold. Rosalia was still unaware that she had nearly died at Julian's hands the night before. She sulked, upset that he had given her his cloak and gotten sick as a result. The Duke, listening to her, hesitated. If it were my sister, she would definitely keep them apart. Lost in thought, they arrived at the Pegasus stables. Looking at the Pegasus that had nearly killed Rosalia, the Duke decided to set a date for their execution. Both Rosalia and the stable hand were shocked. In the Duke's eyes, even though Pegasus were precious mythical beasts, they couldn't be spared after harming Rosalia. But they didn't do anything wrong. It would be so unfair if they died like this. Rosalia knew the Duke was capable of such things. After all, he had ordered her death even when his men had captured the wrong person. I don't want you to kill them. They were a gift to me. Can't you spare them? Just this once. The Duke looked at Rosalia in silence, then agreed. Rosalia's face lit up with joy. The stable hand, relieved that he wouldn't lose his job, quickly promised to call in experts to fit them with wings, mechanical limbs similar to prosthetics for humans. He then asked Rosalia if she wanted to name them. She happily agreed. This one is Bob, and this one is Ice Cream. Together, they're Bob Ice Cream. She then climbed onto one of the Pegasus backs. Though terrified when she had flown before, just riding on the ground felt exhilarating and fun. But soon, seeing Rosalia's vacant stare, the Duke quickly lifted her down. She then realized she truly was afraid of heights. On their way back, feeling the approaching summer air, Rosalia realized she had been at the Duke's mansion for over 2.5 months. Just then, the Duke stopped her. "I've been thinking about helping those children who lived with you in the alley. Most of them were successfully adopted. They have new families now, and I dealt with the owner of the orphanage." The Duke expected Rosalia to be angry, but the girl instead asked if he could provide prosthetic limbs for the children who were disabled. The Duke was taken aback. After all, it was he who had destroyed the place Rosalia wanted to return to. Shouldn't she hate him? "What are you talking about? Isn't this our home?" The Duke finally breathed a sigh of relief. His voice firm, he replied, "Of course this is our home, but happy days are always fleeting." That day, Simon brought back unexpected news. "Your Grace, the previously missing Chrisanne von Elisa has suddenly appeared." He claims that Miss Rosalia is his biological daughter. She was clearly a little beggar wandering the streets. But after being adopted by the Duke, he suddenly claims she's his own daughter. Upon hearing the news, Duke Valencia, though aware that the Elisa family was trying to antagonize him, didn't take it to heart. After all, the royal family had already approved his adoption paperwork. But before long, the Elisa family, closely allied with the royal family, took the initiative, urging the Duke to hand over Rosalia. The church also brought up the matter of their treatment of Rosalia when she had her accident, using this as leverage to pressure the Valencia family, accusing them of going against ethics and preventing a father and daughter from reuniting. The Duke's face darkened. Everyone was now on Elisa's side. Left with no choice, the Duke had to take Rosalia to the imperial palace. Rosalia, upon hearing the news, didn't want to go. After all, the Saintess's biological father, Chrisanne von Elisa, had never appeared in the Book of the Future. It was as if he hadn't just disappeared, but had actually died. What right does he have to claim me as his daughter? Just because I have silver hair, I'm his daughter. Does he think only the Elisa family has silver hair? Emma, understanding Rosalia's feelings, gently embraced her. "The reason he's saying this is mainly because you were brought back by the Duke. Don't worry, His Grace will take care of everything for you, and the final decision rests with you. Even if you choose to leave, no one will blame you." And so, Rosalia left the Duke's mansion with him. The maids were all worried about her departure. Sitting in the carriage, Rosalia voiced the question that had been on her mind for a long time. Why does Valencia hate Elisa so much? After confirming with the Duke that he could tell Rosalia, Simon said, as I mentioned before, Valencia is located in the north and Elisa in the east. But in reality, the east should have been Valencia's territory. The north at that time was known as the wastelands. Whether it was the temperature or the terrain, it was far less habitable than other regions. The Elisa family didn't want this land, so they plotted to have the Valencia family's representative drink poison wine, preventing him from attending the meeting, and thus claimed the east for themselves. The Valencia family, having failed to attend the meeting and broken their promise, were banished to the desolate north. Since then, the two families have been at odds. Furthermore, Chrisanne von Elisa doesn't have a good reputation. Even the previous Duke of Elisa didn't hold him in high regard. So at the time, when it was learned that Rosalind's intended husband wasn't the Duke, everyone was shocked. The Duke immediately silenced Simon. Listening to their conversation, Rosalia looked out the window. What is love, anyway? After 2.5 days of waiting, the day of Rosalia's visit to the imperial palace arrived. Simon instructed Rosalia not to speak out of turn, saying that the Duke would answer all questions. As for the Emperor going back on his word, the Duke didn't take it to heart. After all, Rosalia's status had already been granted his permission. If he truly went back on his word, he would be slapping his own face. Rosalia, do you remember what I told you before? You said that the Valencia family never bows easily. After paying respects to His Majesty, the Emperor, the condescending man, began to speak sarcastically. It's quite difficult to get an audience with you, Duke. Looking at Rosalia, the Emperor asked for the girl's name. My name is Rosalia von Valencia. Rosalia was surprised that she had bitten her tongue at such a crucial moment. Just then, Duke Elisa entered. An old man and another man walked in. The man immediately looked at Rosalia. A chilling aura instantly enveloped her. She didn't understand why looking at the man gave her the same goosebumps she got when looking at a lifelike doll in the middle of the night. Faced with the Duke's questioning look, Rosalia didn't voice her concerns. And then they got down to business. Duke Elisa began by saying that the moment he saw Rosalia, he was certain she was related to his younger brother. Rosalia was bewildered. Do I really resemble him that much? She has blue eyes, just like Rosalind. I'm certain she is Chrisanne and Rosalind's daughter. Duke Valencia, thank you for taking care of my niece for this time. And, as Rosalind's daughter, she would undoubtedly possess divine power. The Emperor wanted to summon the High Priest to confirm this. However, Duke Elisa quickly intervened, stating that he was searching for a blood relative of the Elisa family, not the Saintess. Moreover, Rosalind's divine power wasn't innate, so even the High Priest wouldn't be able to help. Rosalia recalled that not only had Chrisen never appeared in the Book of the Future, but it also never mentioned any resemblance between them. Everything was diverging from the story she knew. In the book, the Saintess herself chose the Elisa family, which is why they adopted her. Why aren't you asking for my opinion? Simon was utterly dumbfounded by Rosalia's words. Those two white-haired uncles suddenly appeared and claimed to be my family, but I don't want to go with them. Shouldn't I have say in my own life? Duke Elisa immediately seized upon this. Your Majesty, how could an 8-year-old child say such things? Duke Valencia must have brainwashed her. Furthermore, I've heard that my niece was seriously injured, almost fatally, at Valencia Castle. They even summoned a high priest to heal her. My children have never experienced such accidents. This proves that the unmarried Duke Valencia is completely unfit to raise a child. Duke Valencia's face darkened. He hadn't wanted to speak, but Duke Elisa's claims were becoming increasingly outrageous. He was about to retort, but the Emperor interrupted, asking Rosalia to excuse herself. The matter clearly wouldn't be resolved quickly. Rosalia looked at Duke Valencia, receiving a confirming nod. She reluctantly agreed, glancing back repeatedly as she followed the attendant out. Leaving the palace, Rosalia replayed the conversation in her mind. The Emperor pretended to be neutral, but he was clearly biased towards the Elisa family. Just then, an object whizzed past her. An arrow had nearly struck her. The attendant had barely begun to ask if she was all right when a blond boy appeared before them. He seemed unharmed. The attendant simply reminded the boy that Rosalia was a guest of the royal family and to be more careful. After all, her life was more important than his. But the next moment, everyone was stunned. Your swordsmanship is terrible, Rosalia declared, snatching the crossbow from the boy's hands. She aimed it at him. Even though this is my first time handling a weapon like this, I'm sure I can shoot better than you. Rosalia froze as soon as the words left her mouth. He's not someone you can point a weapon at casually. A nearby guard sword was now pressed against her neck. Rosalia, however, showed no fear at the guard's chilling expression. She tossed the crossbow back to the blond boy. Well, I didn't know. You just shot an arrow at me, after all. As the guard sheathed his sword, Rosalia's next words stunned the boy. Apologize. You almost shot me in the head. Even the adult with you apologized. You can't just pretend nothing happened. But the pampered boy refused to apologize. Who told you to stand there? I should be commended for not making you bow down to me. How old are you? I'm definitely younger than you. Anyone with eyes can see that. And you're asking me. Seems like your brain is just for show. The boy was speechless. Upon learning that Rosalia was a maid from the Valencia family, and for Julian's sake, he decided to ignore her and turned to leave. Rosalia now understood. The boy was Julian's older half-brother, the first prince, Caesar von Ortega. Although he also admired the Saintess, he was utterly insignificant compared to the other three young lords. Late that night, after waiting for who knew how long, Rosalia received some unexpected news. You're lying to me, right? He was a little beggar wandering the streets, but because he had the same eyes as his first love, the Duke adopted him as his daughter. The Duke had promised Rosalia that he would never abandon her under any circumstances. But this time, he had broken his promise. After a heated debate that lasted late into the night, Rosalia finally learned her fate. The victor was Elisa. Faced with her questions, the Duke remained silent. Duke Elisa approached, telling Duke Valencia to keep his distance from Rosalia. However, the Duke hadn't yet finalized the adoption relinquishment paperwork. Duke Elisa had no choice but to give up on preventing them from talking. I quickly contacted my family and had them send this to you. After all, it's your most prized possession. Rosalia accepted the doll, remaining silent for a long moment. Didn't you say I was part of the Valencia family? Didn't you say I was your daughter? So, I don't belong to the Valencia family anymore. Just then, the Duke reached out and stroked Rosalia's head, just as he always did. Don't worry, I'll find a way to bring you home. Just wait for me a little while. While you're staying at the Elisa house, You don't have to listen to them. You can flip tables, you can rip clothes. And if he does anything strange to you, bite him. Rosalia had just agreed when Duke Elisa grabbed her wrist, preparing to leave. Rosalia yanked her arm away. My name is Rosalia. Don't change my name without permission, and I can walk by myself. Rosalia didn't notice her sleeve slipping down, revealing the scar on her arm. Duke Elisa, however, saw it. Upon arriving at the Elisa mansion, a young man descended the stairs. He was Raoul von Elisa, Duke Elisa's son. Just as the Duke was introducing the girl to his son as his cousin, Cordelia, he noticed Rosalia's expression and quickly corrected himself. Raoul showed no joy at Rosalia's arrival. His golden eyes held a distinct look of disdain. Duke Elisa then instructed Raoul to take Rosalia to her room. As they walked, Rosalia reminded Raoul not to mispronounce her name. This suited the young man just fine. The inexplicable animosity radiating from him made Rosalia think he was truly unpleasant. When Rosalia was brought to the room, she looked around, not finding it objectionable. She didn't particularly care where she stayed. After all, she would only be there a few days before Duke Valencia came to take her home. I advise you not to blindly trust him. The fact that you're here now already shows that Duke Valencia has abandoned you. Rosalia firmly believed, truly believed, that the Duke, who had promised her, would come for her. Raoul, feeling ignored, turned away. I think that doll looks a lot like you. Rosalia understood his meaning. The worn doll, dressed in new clothes, seemed out of place, just like her. As the door slowly closed, Raoul watched Rosalia hugging the doll, a strange smile playing on his lips. Meanwhile, in Duke Elisa's room, he recalled the heated argument with Duke Valencia. He didn't care whether Rosalia was truly his blood relative. He had accused Valencia of child abuse, and that's how he had successfully brought Rosalia back. In a few days, the royal family would send a doctor to confirm Rosalia's condition. Just in case, have someone draw some of her blood while she's asleep. Duke Elisa's words startled the butler. There's a faint needle mark on her arm. If we draw some blood through that mark and blame it on Duke Valencia, he won't be able to defend himself. Even His Majesty is helping us now. We can't let all this go to waste. Just then, Raoul burst through the door. He questioned his father about whether he truly intended to adopt Rosalia. After reminding Raoul to maintain proper etiquette, Duke Elisa dismissed the butler. Is this about Cordelia? I know you feel sorry for her, but did she complain to you about me making her stay in the attic? Or did she ask you to plead her case? No. Sympathy is a useless stumbling block. She doesn't need help, yet you constantly worry about her. This will only bring you trouble. As dawn approached, a figure appeared by Rosalia's bed. A maid stood there, holding a syringe, nervously sweating, to obey the Duke's orders. The maid tremblingly pulled up Rosalia's sleeve, preparing to prick her arm. Just then, Rosalia woke up. What are you doing? The maid, surprised, quickly hid the syringe behind her back. Seeing the maid's silence, Rosalia demanded she reveal what she was hiding. The maid remained nervously silent. After all, the butler had instructed her not to let Rosalia discover anything. She stammered that she was just bringing Rosalia a change of clothes. Rosalia quickly got out of bed and followed her. When she put on the new clothes, she found they fit perfectly. She recalled Simon mentioning that the Elisa family had no girls her age. Yet the room she was in was clearly a girl's room, filled with girls' clothes. As Rosalia wondered if these had been prepared for her in advance, the maid, thinking she had escaped detection, turned to leave. Rosalia stopped her. In her hand was the syringe from the maid's pocket. Were you planning to draw my blood with this? Or were you planning to stab me to death? The maid frantically denied it. Just then, hearing the commotion, Raoul entered the room. When Rosalia explained about the syringe, Raoul seemed unconcerned. But when he saw the dress Rosalia was wearing, he grabbed her and sharply ordered her to take it off. Rosalia refused. You want me to take my clothes off? Are you crazy? Besides, this dress is from your family's wardrobe. Raoul fell silent for a moment. He ordered the maid to leave, his eyes cold, telling her to think carefully about how she would explain this. Then he demanded the syringe from Rosalia. She didn't want to bother with him. Pointing to the door, she told him to leave. Looking at her resolute face, Raoul was speechless. When news of the failed blood draw reached, Duke Elisa hadn't given up. He added a sleeping draft to Rosalia's meal, preparing to enact his scheme once more. Would Rosalia discover the problem? To deal with his political enemy, the man drugged the young girl with a sleeping potion in order to draw her blood and carry out his unspeakable secret. Although Rosalia was unaware of their conspiracy, desperate to return to Duke Valencia's side, she knocked the food off the table. Upon learning that Rosalia hadn't eaten all day, Duke Elisa decided to hold a family dinner that evening. Looking at the sumptuous food, Rosalia didn't want to accept Duke Elisa's apparent concern. After all, Duke Valencia had told her that if the food at the Elisa mansion didn't look as good as the food at home, she didn't have to eat it. At the Valencia estate, everything she used was of the highest quality. Here, even her clothes were looked down upon. Just then, Raul, sitting beside her, raised a question, pointing to the mark on Rosalia's arm. He suggested, feigning confusion, that perhaps the girl had encountered a Pegasus back at the Valencia estate. Rosalia was irritated by their questioning, but didn't bother explaining. She was puzzled. Since it was a family dinner, where was the man who claimed to be her father? Duke Elisa, unwilling to answer, quickly changed the subject, suggesting that Rosalia and Raul should talk more. Rosalia had no desire to speak with the boy. Before Raul could open his mouth, she asked if the Elisa family had seized the Eastern Territories by poisoning the Valencia family's wine. Raul didn't answer directly, stating only that the common narrative involved wine. His ambiguous answer exasperated Rosalia. After all, wine could be strong wine or poison wine. She nonchalantly remarked that they were truly babies. Raul didn't take offense. His family had always taken pride in this legend. They had achieved victory without lifting a finger, simply by using their wits. Rosalia's sudden laughter interrupted him. I think you resorted to trickery because you lacked the confidence to win fairly. With that, Rosalia picked up a drink from the table, preparing to drink it. But in the next second, Duke Elisa, rising from his seat, snatched it away, instructing a servant to replace the girl's drink. He then proceeded to cut Rosalia's steak. Raul, who had never seen his father behave this way, broke out in a cold sweat. Duke Elisa's actions were merely a ploy to gain Rosalia's trust. Several days passed. Rosalia, glancing at the servant trailing behind her, decided to escape their surveillance. After walking for a while, she broke into a run. One turn, and she was gone from their sight. Rosalia was curious. Why hadn't the man who claimed to be her father appeared after all this time? Did he really want to see his daughter? Frantically searching for the man's room, she stumbled upon a staircase. On the floor lay a long strand of silver hair. Rosalia picked it up, wondering to whom it belonged. Just then, the sound of footsteps descending the stairs reached her ears. Both were startled at the sight of each other. Rosalia felt a moment of relief upon seeing Raul, but the boy, his expression grim, slapped her across the face. The air thickened. Rosalia hadn't expected to be struck simply for wandering around. It took a moment for Raul to realize what he'd done. Rosalia wasn't about to let him off easily. Puffing out her cheeks, she punched him. What did I do wrong? Tell me, what did I do wrong? I don't want to see you either. Do you think I want to be here? Neither you, nor Blake, nor Edmund. I wish none of you had ever appeared in my life. Was I wrong? Just because I don't know my place. Because I didn't live quietly and obediently. A distraught Rosalia finally voiced her feelings. As she continued to hit him, Raul grabbed her wrists. His voice was firm. Let go of me, or I'll never forgive you. Shortly after, the royal physician arrived at the Elisa mansion. Seeing the obvious marks on Rosalia's face, the physician was startled. Duke Elisa hastily explained that they were just playing around. Looking at a disheveled Raul, the physician didn't press the matter. Watching Rosalia undergo the examination, Duke Elisa rubbed his temples in frustration. He was relieved to learn that Rosalia hadn't reached the attic before being stopped. He warned Raul not to be impulsive and to control his emotions. He also forbade Raul from seeing Rosalia for the time being. The physician finished the examination. He didn't know that the scars on Rosalia's arms were the result of repeated blood draws at the orphanage. Because the exact timing of the scarring was unclear, and Rosalia had recently received treatment from a priest. The physician stated that besides the altercation between the two children, he would truthfully report everything else to His Majesty the Emperor. After seeing the physician off, Duke Elisa questioned Rosalia about why she had gone to the attic. Upon learning that Rosalia was searching for the man they called her father, Duke Elisa instructed a guard to bring Chrisanne. Rosalia, upon hearing this, wondered why he agreed so readily this time. But remembering Raul's agitated state earlier, Rosalia asked Duke Elisa if something was hidden in the attic. He deflected, saying it was just a storage room. Duke Elisa then shifted Rosalia's attention to Chrisanne. Chrisanne was clearly unusual. Duke Elisa remarked that whatever he told him to do, he obeyed like a machine without a word. When Chrisanne embraced Rosalia, the girl shuddered. Feeling a chilling coldness and the stiffness of the man's body, she noted his lack of emotional response, even though his supposedly cherished daughter was injured. Then, upon learning that Duke Valencia was standing at their front gate, Duke Elisa was startled. He ordered that no matter the commotion, Duke Valencia was not to be allowed inside. After all, Duke Valencia couldn't take a child protected by the royal family. Several days passed. Through the maids' idle chatter, Rosalia learned of Duke Valencia's arrival. She finally understood why they had kept her confined inside. Late that night, Rosalia slipped out of her bedroom. Looking at the staircase before her, she knew that if she descended, she would see her beloved Duke. Rosalia now believed that the Duke would always be there for her, no matter what. She resolved that when they were reunited, she would call him father. Just then, a figure appeared. It was the man Duke Elisa claimed was Rosalia's father, Chrisanne. And Raul, are you going to find Duke Valencia? Seeing that she had been discovered, Rosalia didn't deny it. Raul hadn't come to stop her, because as long as you're gone, the real Cordelia will return. Have you ever thought about whose things the clothes you wear and the room you sleep in are? While you live comfortably, do you know how miserably my real cousin lives? Rosalia was angered by his inexplicable accusations. She had known from the beginning that these things didn't belong to her. You're so ridiculous. You just can't stand that I'm eating well and sleeping soundly now. But I never longed for a life of luxury. I only had one wish, and that was to survive. Choosing the Valencia family was the only extravagant choice I've ever made in my life. Do you think the jewels you wear are extravagant? I doubt it. But everything you disdain was once an unattainable luxury for me. Still, I'm quite lucky. At least someone like you, who doesn't care whether I live or die, who would leave me in a fire, isn't my family. Enraged, Raul shoved Rosalia. The girl's foot slipped, and to Raul's astonishment, she tumbled backward. In that critical moment, Rosalia grabbed Chrisanne's sleeve. But to her surprise, the man's momentum carried him down the stairs with her. Raul had a chance to catch Rosalia, but remembering what she had said to him earlier, he stopped. He watched as Rosalia fell backward. A heavy thud echoed. Parts scattered across the floor. Chrisanne's head and body were separated. This was the last thing Rosalia saw before losing consciousness. She remembered Blake telling her that technology was always advancing, and maybe one day there would be human-like machines in the world. Rosalia closed her eyes. The beautiful young girl questioned the boy. The enraged boy pushed her down the stairs. She fell into a coma. Upon learning of this, Duke Elisa, though troubled by how to handle the situation, didn't blame Raul. She slipped and fell herself. What does it have to do with you? Furthermore, he realized the needle marks on her arm would be detrimental to Duke Valencia. In that case, it would be better if she never woke up. Raul was shocked to hear these words from his father, who had always taught him to be a man of upstanding character. Duke Elisa, however, self-righteously believed that everything he did was to uphold the family's honor. He instructed Raul to care for Rosalia during this time. The thought of his cousin caring for his sick sister brought a strange smile to the Duke's lips. Looking at Rosalia lying in bed, Raul silently observed her. Meanwhile, Rosalia found herself once again in the White Hall. The pink-eyed ghost immediately confronted her. You have a nerve to come back. Seeing that they were about to attack her, Rosalia frantically ran forward, inadvertently bumping into a man. Rosalia didn't think too much, focused only on escaping the ghosts. This child isn't the culprit who damaged the book. Leave her alone. Rosalia didn't understand why the man spoke up for her. Upon learning that the girl had entered with a key, the ghosts ceased their menacing pursuit. The man introduced himself, and Rosalia learned that he was the librarian of this place, a library that recorded everything in the world, and bore the same name as the religious order, Akasha. You shouldn't have the power to be here yet. It seems you've suffered a serious injury, triggering the key's automatic response. Rosalia had always assumed this place was a dream, but then the man cast a spell, healing her injuries, and informed her that she, too, possessed this ability. Just as Rosalia was about to ask a question, she felt another sharp pain. It seems you haven't mastered your power yet and can't stay here long. I hope when we meet again, you'll have grown. Remember, my name is Yog-Sothoth. But Rosalia didn't hear his last words. Raoul, unaware that Rosalia had awakened, muttered to himself, "I've hated you from the start. A vicious, filthy child like you couldn't possibly share the same blood as me. Father brought you back for other reasons. The fact that I didn't catch you before was simply because I didn't want to. Your existence is destined to stain our family's honor." With that, Raoul walked out. Hearing the door close, Rosalia opened her eyes. Speechless at Raoul's bizarre pronouncements, she moved her arms, discovering her injuries were healed. So it hadn't been a dream after all. But the moment she opened her eyes, the memory of the experience faded. She pushed it aside, unwrapped her bandages, and left the room. She was about to leave the mansion when she saw the staircase where she had fallen. Rosalia hesitated. Just as she mustered the courage to descend, the servants realized she wasn't in her room. Rosalia panicked and ran into a nearby room. Breathing a sigh of relief, believing she had evaded them, she froze. Standing before her was the humanoid machine. Startled, Rosalia stared at the gleaming jewels within the machine's inner workings. She didn't know they were the core controlling the machine. Just then, the door opened. Duke Elisa and the butler entered. They had just discovered signs of an intruder, and Duke Valencia, who had been standing guard at the front gate, had vanished. The Duke ordered the butler to increase security and find Rosalia quickly. The door closed behind them. Hidden behind the desk, Rosalia, thinking they had left, started to stand. Then she remembered Lauren Zod's words, "Never let your guard down," because the hunter is always waiting for the prey to relax. Peeking out, she saw Duke Elisa hadn't left. He was looking at the humanoid machine in the corner. "I must be truly tired," he murmured, to be hallucinating subtle changes in Krazan's appearance. When Rosalia finally peeked out and saw Duke Elisa was truly gone, she stood up. She noticed a letter on the desk. "J'ai faute de donner." The name felt familiar. After 2.5 minutes of contemplation, it clicked. The boy who had humiliated her at the art exhibition. He was the one who had cut the Pegasus's reins and fed them a frenzy-inducing drug at her birthday party. The incident had seemed unusual, but Duke Valencia hadn't been able to uncover anyone backing the boy. Now, Rosalia understood. Duke Elisa had orchestrated it, all to kill him. He had claimed to be the girl's father, yet conspired with others to cause his death. The revelation shocked Rosalia. She seriously questioned Duke Elisa's sanity, but escaping was her priority. Tucking the letter into her clothes, she returned to the door. Hearing the commotion outside, she knew she'd be caught if she left now. She didn't want to face Duke Elisa, who wanted her dead, Raoul, who despised her, or her broken machine father. Opening the window, she looked down. The drop to the ground was roughly 250 meters. Rosalia, already afraid of heights, felt dizzy. Desperate to escape, she squeezed her eyes shut, whispering encouragements to herself. "I can do this. I'm strong. I'm the best. I can get down safely." But her trembling voice betrayed her fear. Then, Rosalia's eyes widened in surprise. Perched on the windowsill was the small mechanical bird Julian had used to communicate with her. Julian's voice called up to her from below. The sudden appearance of the boy. Rosalia was both surprised and relieved. But this was clearly not the time for idle chatter. Julian told Rosalia to jump from the window. Rosalia hesitated, unsure if she should obey. She didn't want Julian to get hurt again because of her. Julian insisted that his injury wasn't her fault. Moreover, he wouldn't have survived without her. "Can you trust me again?" he asked. Though still hesitant, Rosalia chose to trust him. She took a deep breath and resolutely jumped from the windowsill, flying toward Julian. A thud echoed. Rosalia had landed on top of Julian, pinning him to the ground. Thankfully, she wasn't too heavy and he wasn't hurt. During the subsequent questioning, Rosalia revealed that Raoul had inexplicably slapped her and pushed her down the stairs. Julian's face darkened. He remained silent, even though Rosalia claimed to have already retaliated. In Julian's mind, the matter was clearly far from over. As Julian held her hand, Rosalia, recalling Raoul's words, asked, "Julian, have you ever thought I was dirty?" The boy, bewildered by the question, firmly denied ever having such a thought. Rosalia was relieved by his answer. After leaving Duke Elisa's mansion, Rosalia finally saw her long-awaited uncle. Seeing Rosalia covered in bandages, Duke Valencia practically itched to confront Duke Elisa then and there. But when Rosalia called him Papa, the man froze. "I missed you so much, Papa. I've been listening to you," she said. "I kept defying the white-haired uncle and even knocked over the food." As Rosalia recounted her ordeal, Duke Valencia praised her with a smile. In the carriage on the way back, Rosalia first returned the small bird to Julian. Then, she handed the letter and the jewel she had found in Duke Elisa's study to the Duke, explaining that the man named Chrisan was a machine. His head and body are separated now, she added. And the jewel, I took it from his body. When they arrived home with Rosalia, Lorenzodd was also shocked to see the bandaged girl. Rosalia was exasperated by the fussing man. I'm not covered head to toe in bandages. I'm not a mummy. Though Lorenzodd couldn't confirm whether or not Rosalia was a mummy, he had something important to tell her. Abandoned as a child, surviving by begging, the girl was unaware of her status as the revered saintess. Taken in by the Duke as his adopted daughter, Zheng Di falsely claimed she was his niece, conspiring with the emperor to take her from the Duke, intending to steal the girls, yet to awaken divine power. Beaten and pushed down the stairs, Rosalia, after much hardship, finally returned to her adoptive father's home. Lorenzodd carefully examined her, appalled by her injuries. Learning from Julian that Elisa was responsible, Lorenzodd was baffled by their treatment of the girl. Fortunately, as a precaution, they had replaced the doll's eyes with image stones, capable of recording everything it saw. And since Rosalia always kept the doll with her, the images within were enough to incriminate Duke Elisa. But before they could proceed, they needed Rosalia's permission to dismantle the doll and retrieve the stones. However, Rosalia readily agreed, even before he could explain that they could manage without the evidence. I'll be 9 soon, she explained. A 9-year-old shouldn't carry a doll around anymore. Lorenzodd was pleased by her maturity. The next day, Duke Valencia received a summons from the royal palace, as expected. He took Julian with him. After 2 hours of debate, the emperor, growing weary, called for a recess. Duke Elisa, observing Duke Valencia and Julian at the palace, clenched his fists in frustration, assuming Julian's presence had caused the emperor to suddenly change his mind. He was unaware that even without Julian, he would still face charges of child abuse. When Raoul stepped out for some fresh air, Julian followed and confronted him, directly asking if he had slapped Rosalia and pushed her downstairs. Without waiting for a reply, Julian slammed Raoul's head against the wall. You should be grateful for that bloodline you're so proud of, Julian snarled. If you weren't an Elisa, I would have broken your hand. His crimson eyes glared at the boy, but in Raoul's eyes, Julian, despite his noble status, was nothing more than a weak, vulnerable, isolated, and terminally ill prince. And Rosalia was just a dirty, scruffy little filly. Raoul didn't think she was worth Julian's defense. For an outsider with no blood relation, could Julian truly consider her a sister? Moreover, she was both lowly and vulgar. Looking at the defiant boy before him, Julian remained unmoved. After all, only those trying to hide their true feelings resorted to such empty rhetoric. Seeing his secret exposed, Raoul, enraged, was about to retort, when the first prince, Caesar, interrupted them, casually responding to Raoul's greeting. He pulled Julian away. Watching their retreating figures, Raoul confirmed that the first prince truly treated the pitiful second prince as a brother. Ever since Julian's mother had passed away, his stepmother and half-brother had filled the void. From the moment he met them, Julian had lived behind mask. Duke Elisa had intended to draw the girl's blood, to further his schemes. He hadn't anticipated her escape, nor that she would take the letters detailing his correspondence with the Donner family. Now, Duke Elisa's face was contorted in a grimace. He had not only lost custody of Rosalia, but had also been forced to compensate Duke Valencia with a rich mine. For a nobleman like him, this was a tremendous humiliation. A girl beside him offered a casual agreement, but also blamed him for being too hasty. That person was Cordelia, looking at the girl who differed from Rosalia only in their eyes. Duke Elisa was furious. After all, Cordelia had assured him there wouldn't be any problems. Indeed, there wouldn't have been had he not altered the predetermined fate. And all of this was because Rosalia possessed powerful divine power. Cordelia wanted to replace her. They had forged a book that supposedly foretold the future. It stated that Rosalia would be thrown into a fire as a false saintess, and then killed by Duke Valencia. But now, Duke Valencia had taken Rosalia in as his adopted daughter and was deeply concerned for her. Cordelia hadn't foreseen such a turn of events. Moreover, the machine that impersonated Rosalia's father had lost its core. The original plan had been perfect. This is all because we were caught, Cordelia said. And the second prince and Duke Valencia are the crux of the problem. Seeing this, Duke Elisa said nothing more. He took out the blood drawn from Rosalia while she was unconscious and handed it to Cordelia. He instructed her to access the library again and alter the book's contents. He desperately wanted to know what the future held. "I will not disappoint you again, Father," Cordelia promised. "Everything will be as you wish." Meanwhile, at Duke Valencia's mansion, Rosalia looked at her mended teddy bear. Though still worn and tattered, she gently picked it up and cast a sweet dream spell on it. Then, she went to find her father, who had just returned. Seeing the bread in Duke Valencia's hand, her expression immediately changed. She clamored for him to give it to her. "You can have this after dinner," he said. Rosalia was disappointed, but Julian offered her his portion. "Julian, you're an angel," she exclaimed. Although they had ultimately gained custody of Rosalia, Duke Valencia was still worried. He was worried about Julian's health. His actions in defending Rosalia had been excessive. After all, Julian's curse had become increasingly unpredictable. If he had been influenced by the curse, they needed to be even more cautious. But Julian clearly hadn't considered any of this. In his mind, anything that made Rosalia happy, even giving up everything, including his life, was inconsequential. That day, Rosalia was playing with Lorenzodd. Although he vomited all over the floor, Rosalia received some unexpected news from him. "Am I really not 8 years old?" she wondered. "Maybe I'm older than I think." Learning that a soul was imprisoned within the machine's core, Lorenzodd speculated that perhaps other souls could possess different bodies. Rosalia couldn't help but think of her strangely realistic dreams, her ability to heal from every serious injury. Perhaps she wasn't just 8 years old. Maybe she was 10 or even 20. Lorenzodd, listening to her mumbling, grew curious. Just then, the Duke arrived behind Rosalia and overheard her words. Returning to his room, he summoned Emma. He understood that children of this age often believe they were grown up. However, Rosalia's words today had made him wary. "Miss Rosalia does sometimes say mature things," Emma observed. "But a child's environment has a significant impact, especially their parents or teachers. Could something have happened recently to make Miss Rosalia think this way?" The Duke pondered for 2.5 minutes. He summoned Simon and inquired about Rosalia's studies. "The young lady's learning speed is remarkably fast. However, she seems to be encountering some difficulties with polite speech. That's because your usual manner of speaking isn't very gentlemanly." Hearing the Duke's accusation, Simon was taken aback. He nevertheless explained that Rosalia already knew how to read and hadn't encountered any obstacles in his instruction. The Duke immediately stopped him. From the beginning, he had assumed Simon had taught Rosalia to read. Simon was speechless. After all, no one could teach a young child to read in just a few hours. After speaking, Simon realized something was amiss. He supposed Rosalia must have learned while begging. "What nonsense are you talking about? Orphanages don't teach 5 or 6-year-old children martial arts." Could it be that my daughter is a genius? Should I congratulate you then?" Lauren, who was standing nearby, echoed his brother's sentiments. Simon was completely bewildered. Yes, you're all geniuses." The Duke recalled the day he found Rosalia at the orphanage. Those people had left in a hurry and hadn't completely erased all traces of their presence. Thanks to this, he was able to track down Rosalia. However, considering the girl's words on 2 separate occasions, the Duke wasn't sure how to handle the situation. Meanwhile, in a library within Valencia City, Rosalia put down a book, finding its contents utterly dull. With so many books in this library, there wasn't a single one about possession. Soon after, she went to the Duke's room. "Father, are you busy?" Duke Valencia, engrossed in his work, was startled. "Please have a seat." "Wait a moment. I'll have someone bring you some refreshments." Rosalia obediently sat on the sofa. However, the titles of several books on the table caught her attention. Things like The Right Way to Raise a Child and How to Be an Excellent Father. Noticing this, the Duke quickly stood up and excitedly explained that those were books the previous Duke had read. "Oh, your father was so kind." Hearing Rosalia's words, the Duke couldn't continue working. Upon learning that Rosalia wanted to read books about possession, the Duke suggested she ask his younger brother. Although he's an older, unemployed drifter who abandoned the Valencia family name, it doesn't change the fact that he researches all sorts of strange things. With that, he took Rosalia to find Lauren. Walking down the quiet corridor, looking at the Duke's impassive face, Rosalia softly called out, "Father." However, his reaction was somewhat distressing, immediately arousing Rosalia's suspicion. "Father, do you not like me calling you that?" Because the girl resembled his first love so much. The Duke had adopted her, but every time she called him father, the Duke would react intensely. "Do you not like me calling you father?" But didn't you say I'm your daughter? Why do you always avoid my gaze when I call you father? Hearing Rosalia's words, the Duke didn't know how to respond. This was the first time the girl had a family, and she didn't understand his feelings. If I've overstepped my bounds, I'll just go back to calling you mister like before. The Duke didn't actually dislike Rosalia calling him father, but at that moment, he didn't explain his reasons. Soothing the girl's emotions, he led her to a greenhouse garden. This was a place the Duke had built shortly after inheriting his title. Looking at the roses that bloomed all year round, Rosalia understood who he had built it for, even though she never visited this place until she left this world. Rosalia didn't know how much the Duke cherished her, nor how much he wanted to be a good father. In Valencia, I hold absolute power. I kill those who defy me. I leave those who betray me with no place to be buried. But there was only one person I couldn't do anything about when she deceived me. When I heard she had a child with someone else, I was heartbroken, but not surprised. If you had said you hated me and wanted to go to Elisa, I would have pretended to be calm and sent you away. But what I didn't expect was for you to call me father. Just as this is the first time you've had a father, it's also the first time I've had a daughter. So, it's not that I dislike you that I avoid your gaze. Hearing the Duke's words, Rosalia finally wore a long-awaited smile. I'll wait until you get used to it. The Duke was also happy, but he was curious about how the girl knew how to read without being taught. But Rosalia thought it was something anyone could understand at a glance. You really are a genius. With that, the Duke took out an item. It was the very thing Rosalia had tried to steal when they first met. Everyone has their secrets, and mine is a promise to the owner of this lock of hair that I would protect her daughter no matter what. And she was supposed to be named Cordelia. She has the same hair color as that damned old Elisa, and even the same blue eyes as Rosalind. The Duke believed Rosalia was his first love's daughter. The girl, however, insisted she didn't have a mother. All children have parents. I hope you won't deny the fact that you have a mother. Otherwise, both you and she will be sad. But Rosalia had given up on her parents, instinctively believing they had abandoned her on purpose. Jumping to conclusions is a bad habit. Even if you say you won't be sad, you must want to have a family like everyone else, right? Rosalia looked at the man before her. No matter how absurd or ridiculous her words were, he would always patiently soothe and guide her. And he had even shared his secret with her. Rosalia made up her mind. She was ready to tell him about that matter. I read in a book. She really isn't my mother. I'm certain that book mentioned you, Julian, and even me. It even recorded the time of my death. The Duke was startled. Who ended your life? He asked. You killed me. Panic flashed across the Duke's face. Where did you see this book? No, who wrote this book and deliberately showed it to you? It was clear the Duke wasn't getting the answers he wanted from Rosalia. She had completely forgotten when and where she had read the book and who the author was. The only thing she was sure of was that their future would unfold according to that book. The day we first met, the person you should have met wasn't me. It was him. But I didn't tell you, and I came home with you. I told you I'm not a good child. Having accidentally seen a book that foretold a tampered future, the girl firmly believed it, and she revealed this secret to her adoptive father. The Duke didn't believe her. After all, it was just a book. He had never thought of harming Rosalia. But the girl was struggling internally. She didn't want the man in front of her to harbor unrealistic fantasies about her, only to be disappointed later. Because if you're sad, I'll be heartbroken too. And it feels like I saw that book before I was born. Maybe I was even older than you are now. Duke Valencia fell silent. The girl before him was clearly carrying a heavy burden, yet she put on a carefree facade to comfort him. Rosalia, even if the real daughter of Rosalind appears, I won't abandon you. And in that book, did I treat you like my own daughter? No, right? That means reality isn't what's written in that book at all. I hope you won't blindly believe it. No matter what, you will always be my daughter. I swear, the ending you saw in that book will never come to pass. The Duke gazed steadily at Rosalia. He had made up his mind. Even if the contents of that book were fictional, he would atone to Rosalia. Even if it took a lifetime, he was willing. He then ruffled the girl's hair, preparing to take her to Lorenzodd. On the way, watching Rosalia searching for blue roses, the Duke thought of the Library of the Gods, which recorded the past, present, and future. Only the saintess could enter there. If Rosalia was the saintess, then her mature words and seemingly omniscient behavior all had an explanation. But why did Rosalia mention Rosalind's real daughter? Duke Valencia decided to investigate. Lorenzodd, though puzzled by their sudden visit, was delighted by Rosalia's arrival, given his eccentric personality. Upon hearing that the girl was looking for books on possession, Lorenzodd immediately dismissed her. telling her to wander around. He then asked the Duke, should we tell him about the book that records the future? He seems to think he's possessed. You should seriously explain it to him. Lorenzodd paused for a moment. He didn't think Rosalia was possessed. If the age of the body and soul didn't match, the person would subconsciously exhibit awkward behavior, and Rosalia seemed perfectly normal. After some time, the girl looked on with disdain as the boisterous man scurried about, finding books on possession for her. When she heard Lorenzodd offer to help him return the books, she was speechless. After all, that was a servant's job. Rosalia was unaware of the conversation between the two men. As the trio walked through the spacious hall, Lorenzodd mentioned the upcoming hunting festival. Running away solves nothing. Besides, Rosalia needs to gain some experience. She'll have to meet the high priest sooner or later. And when you were Rosalia's age, didn't you hunt a bear? Rosalia was surprised and quickly asked her father, only to learn that at age 8, it wasn't him who hunted the bear, but their older sister, Lorenzodd. Uncle, then when did you hunt a bear? I've never hunted a bear. A frail man like me, how could I possibly kill a bear? But if you call me uncle, I might become stronger. Rosalia gave him a look of disgust. Currently, she only saw Lorenzodd as a somewhat eccentric man. If you want to hear it, go find Julian, or have your own daughter. That won't do. How unfair to my partner and child. Besides, I've already made a holy declaration. I swore to my older sister that I would never fall in love or marry. Lorenzodd's reason for doing so was to maintain the purity of the noble bloodline. Furthermore, the Duke's mansion's magic was very exclusive, so their older sister, to prevent the family tree from becoming too complicated, had to sacrifice the frivolous Lorenzodd. This made Rosalia even more curious about this woman she had never met, especially since she was Julian's mother. In Lorenzodd's mind, the word remarkable couldn't even begin to describe his older sister's exceptional nature. In her prime, just hearing her name would make people tremble and collapse. Although we all assumed she would become the next, or perhaps the next after next, Duke of Valencia, the Valencia family probably couldn't satisfy her ambition. So, against all odds, she successfully became the empress. That's why Julian feels so much pressure. He has such an extraordinary mother. Even if Julian has strengths, they're overshadowed by his mother's legacy. Hearing this, Rosalia was thrilled. Returning to her room, she made up her mind. I can't live like this anymore. Determined to understand possession, she found herself completely unable to comprehend the material. The 8-year-old girl felt embarrassed, but remembering what her father had said, that he had hunted a bear alone at 9, Rosalia resolved to change herself. So, she went to the Duke's villa and found Julian. Have you ever killed a bear? She asked, but the boy had no such memory. His episodes always occurred in a trance-like state. Julian misunderstood Rosalia, thinking she was afraid of the cold winter and wanted a bearskin coat. He didn't realize she simply wanted to prove herself. If I can hunt a bear, she thought, everyone will acknowledge me. I'll truly become a member of the Valencia family. Although no one had ever said she wasn't a member, Rosalia innocently believed that anything a family member could do, she should be able to do too. After confirming with the boy that bears would be present during the hunting season, Rosalia immediately went to the Duke's room. Father, I want to participate in the hunting season. Though inwardly reluctant, the man couldn't refuse his daughter's request. He was a doting father, always granting her wishes. Though worried about a potential encounter with the high priest, that afternoon, the girl, armed with a wooden sword, began training under the watchful eyes of the knights. They understood that the young lady's participation in the hunting season was largely symbolic. To avoid discouraging her, they planned to help her catch a rabbit. Rosalia, unaware of the knight's intentions, diligently practiced her swordsmanship. Afterwards, she enjoyed the cookies Julian brought. Julian, your cookies are still so delicious. Since starting her sword training, Rosalia had become incredibly busy. But this wasn't a fleeting whim. No matter the difficulty, she was determined. Rosalia was also at the age where she was losing her baby teeth. If my front teeth fall out, I'll definitely look silly. To reassure her, Julian told her how Lorenzodd had teased him relentlessly when he lost his front teeth. Rosalia immediately understood she needed to keep her distance from her uncle. Are you still determined to hunt a bear? He asked. The girl answered with certainty. I want to be like father. I admire him so much. He's my role model. Isn't that why you love your mother so much? Looking at Rosalia's bright smile, Julian was speechless. Soon, the girl resumed her training, accompanied by the knights. But Rosalia was dissatisfied with the scarecrow before her. Bears are huge. Can't we get a bigger one? The knight firmly refused. No, this scarecrow is just the right height for you. We'll talk about it when you're taller. Rosalia was dumbfounded. She trudged home, longing to grow up quickly, or at least be as tall as Julian. "You help me." They went to a tree, and with a stone, she asked him to mark her height on the trunk. Rosalia was clearly unaware that trees grow at a different rate than humans. Though tempted to tell her, Julian still marked the tree above the girl's head. "I need someone to compare with." "Stand there." Under the twilight trees, the girl stood on a stone, stretching on tiptoe. As they drew closer, Julian felt as if under a spell, captivated by Rosalia's earnest expression as the sunlight dappled around them. Blushing, the boy watched, speechless, as the girl hopped off the stone. Rosalia, oblivious to Julian's flustered state, looked at the two marks on the tree trunk. "Let's measure again in 10 years. I'll definitely be taller than you by then." The boy, burdened by his curse, didn't know where he would be in 10 years, but he still smiled and agreed. "It's a promise then, with the tree as our witness." The two children, uncertain of their futures, linked pinkies, making a vow and painting a picture of their grown-up selves. They looked forward to standing together beneath this tree again in 10 years. However, on the day Rosalia lost her front tooth, everything changed. The 8-year-old girl was about to participate in the hunting season, and her family was worried. Sitting in the carriage, Rosalia heard her father ask, "Do you want to catch a bear to prove yourself?" The girl answered him with certainty. She wanted to become as strong as her father and earn the recognition of others. "You're still young. You can't catch a bear. So, just be a spectator this hunting season. Besides, you'll also meet the head of the religious order. He's been wanting to see you." Rosalia was surprised. Why would he want to see her? Did he also think she was the saintess? But she didn't want to meet him. The Duke smiled and stroked his daughter's hair, reassuring her not to worry. "If he wants to see you, there are a few rules he must follow. First, he must maintain a distance of 10 meters from you. Second, he needs my permission to speak to you. Lastly, I won't agree to any divine power or saintess tests." They soon arrived at the hunting grounds. The nobles were surprised by Duke Valencia's arrival. After all, rumors had spread about him abusing a child and being arrested. Now, not long after, he appeared at the hunting season. Neither of them paid attention to the whispers. Rosalia asked her father where the bears were. But instead of answering, the Duke picked up a cookie and placed it in his daughter's mouth. This heartwarming scene shocked the nobles. They never imagined the usually aloof Duke Valencia could be so caring. Just then, the girl noticed two people exchanging handkerchiefs. Unaware that this was a gesture of affection, she regretted not bringing a handkerchief herself. The Duke nervously asked her what she was thinking. "Nothing, I just saw them exchanging handkerchiefs, and I wanted to join in." A butterfly flitting in the sky caught Rosalia's attention. Just as she reached out to catch it, the Duke stopped her. "Don't touch it. It's the Emperor's mechanical butterfly." The Duke was so nervous because the Emperor's body deteriorates at the age of 100. A young boy is chosen and placed inside a tree called the Angel's Egg. After 3 days, the boy transforms into the Emperor, inheriting his memories. The original boy dies in the process. This generation's emperor was about to undergo this body change and had almost no divine power left. So, he used these butterflies, which could absorb divine power from others, to replenish himself. Rosalia was shocked. Then she noticed a young boy in the distance. "Is that the emperor? He's so small." The Duke confirmed, reminding Rosalia not to interact with him privately. Just then, a woman called out to Duke Valencia. He turned to see a red-haired woman waving, Duchess Petros of the Crimson Knight family. As she approached, she saw the girl beside him. "Is this your adopted daughter?" She didn't cry when she saw me. She's just staring. Then, with a thought, a silver-haired child in the Valencia family. "This is perfect." She suddenly hugged Rosalia, nuzzling her soft cheeks. The Duke's protective instincts kicked in. He snatched his daughter back from Duchess Petros. "Aren't you banned from the hunting season? Why are you here?" "It's because of my son. He wanted to come, and I had no choice but to ask His Majesty for permission. He allowed me to come and keep an eye on him. Otherwise, he'd definitely cause trouble." As the Duchess explained, a scream echoed from the distance. The nobles, who had been chatting quietly, erupted in commotion. "That's not human. Look at that size. It's definitely not human." Knowing her son was causing trouble again, Duchess Petros went to Edmund. "What are you doing?" The red-haired boy was about to answer when he saw Rosalia's frightened face. He started to run towards her, but his mother grabbed him by the scruff of his neck and carried him away. Rosalia watched them with a resigned expression. "I hope we never meet again. Live happily ever after with your mother." She had come to the hunting season to prove her strength by catching a bear. But instead, she was surrounded by noble women being plied with pastries. Seeing her father similarly popular, Rosalia, feeling stuffed, jumped down from her chair and decided to take a walk to digest. The Duke, worried, wanted to accompany her, but his daughter gave him a reproachful look. Didn't you say there were no wild animals nearby? And you're grown up. You can't always cling to your daughter. You don't want to be like Uncle Lorenzodd, do you? Duke Valencia was stunned. He could only watch as his daughter walked towards the forest. Rosalia sat in the grass, watching her father converse with the others. Suddenly, hands covered her mouth. Thinking she was being kidnapped, Rosalia struggled violently, calming down only after realizing it was Blake. She wondered why he was there, since Duke Lampez hadn't come to the hunting season. I ran away from home. I came because you're here, he confessed tenderly. Blake clearly overestimated his reasoning skills. I'm not your guardian. Why are you following me? Didn't I say we'd meet next time? Rosalia was momentarily speechless. He had said something similar before, though she hadn't taken it seriously. Get off me. I'm going to kick your groin. But just as she prepared to act, a man appeared, searching for Blake. He quickly pushed Rosalia and started walking deeper into the forest. I'll take you on an adventure. This puzzled Rosalia even more. How did he know her intentions? But she had already promised her father to go with him. Call him father, Blake urged. But he's not your real father. What does it matter? He is my father. You should go home. Your father will be worried. Blake only wanted to be with her, without Duke Valencia's interference. Rosalia refused. Her promise to her father was paramount. This belongs to my father. Seeing the object Blake suddenly produced, Rosalia snatched it from him, realizing he wouldn't let her leave. She pointed it at his head. However, Rosalia didn't know that using it required magic. She had to return it. Just then, Duke Valencia arrived. Seeing Blake with his daughter, the Duke frowned, a flicker of fear in his eyes at the near theft of his child. To his surprise, Blake grabbed Rosalia and used her as a shield. Tension filled the air. Rosalia urged her father to comply. Father, I'm about fine. Just do what he says for now. Then she walked deeper into the forest with Blake. You've angered my father. What are you going to do? Why don't you go back and apologize? He'll definitely forgive you. Before Blake could answer, a roar startled them both. Their eyes filled with terror. They had seen something terrifying, even knowing she would be abandoned in a fire in the future. Rosalia urged the boy, one of the culprits of that future abandonment, not to give up on life. After comforting Blake, Rosalia went with Edmund to find help. But they hadn't gone far when, trying to keep up with the red-haired boy, Rosalia tripped and fell. Hearing the noise, Edmund noticed her on the ground and rushed over. Cry. I want to see you cry. Rosalia gaped at his absurd words. What was this lunatic saying? Then, her front tooth fell out, seeing the gap in her smile. Edmund let out a pig-like snort. Rosalia's face flushed with anger. You big oaf. You've lost teeth before, too. Why are you laughing at me? After a brief squabble, Edmund noticed the unusual silence. Blake had disappeared. He suspected his mother. He knew Duchess Petros's temperament too well. After being confined for so long, she would definitely want to have some fun. A bewildered Rosalia didn't know what to make of them. She walked towards the hollow of the tree. Blake, upon seeing her, asked about her missing tooth. Don't laugh at me, or I'll leave you here. Soon, Edmund emerged from the tree hollow, carrying Blake on his back. Walking through the silent forest, Blake calmly asked Rosalia, If I died, will my mother be sad? Rosalia didn't know why he would say such a morbid thing, but she was certain his mother would. Be heartbroken. Blake disagreed. Rosalia answered firmly. In her heart, there's only your brother, Everett, not you. This was what he had wanted to tell her at her home. Just then, Blake began to cough violently, seeing the blood on his hand. Rosalia, realizing the gravity of the situation, urged Edmund to hurry back. During their subsequent conversation, Rosalia finally understood why Blake's mother hated him. It was because he had a twin brother who had died when they were very young. His mother couldn't accept this and refused to acknowledge Blake as her son. So you're having suicidal thoughts. If that's the case, I can help you die. All we have to do is leave you here. You'll die. Do you want us to do that? Blake clearly hadn't expected Rosalia to say this, but he didn't truly want to die. Rosalia knew this and scolded him sternly. Don't ever say such things in front of me again, even jokingly. And you have to be like me. If someone is in danger, never abandon them. She looked at Edmund. You too. Just as she finished speaking, a roar interrupted them. Knowing the monstrous creature was nearby, Rosalia urged Edmund to take Blake and run, but she clearly underestimated Edmund's confidence. He threw Blake down and prepared to confront the creature. At the same time, the monster caught up. Edmund drew his sword and charged. Rosalia and Blake expected him to display his strength. But in the next second, Edmund was sent flying by the griffin. Knowing the situation was critical, Rosalia quickly told Blake to take out the magic gun and, holding his hand, prepared to use Blake's magic to launch a sneak attack on the griffin. But before he could pull the trigger, a loud gunshot rang out from the forest. The griffin fell to the ground with a thud. Both Rosalia and Blake froze. Duchess Petros then emerged from the distance, carrying a gun. Duke Valencia, the person Rosalia least wanted to see, also arrived with her. The Empire's eccentric high priest, Lorenzodd. The girl had vowed to catch a bear to prove herself. But upon seeing her target, her face was filled with fear, and she only wanted to escape. After all, the creature in front of her wasn't what she had in mind. Anxiously urging Blake to knock it out with the gun, Rosalia didn't realize she had overestimated him. The boy hesitated, his heart pounding with nervousness. Seeing the griffin about to catch up to Rosalia, Blake quickly stepped forward and hit the griffin in the eye. But this was just luck. His second shot, which revealed his poor aim, hit the ground. Rosalia was speechless. He can't even hit something that big. I bet I could hit it with my eyes closed. When he turned around, the enraged griffin had already raised its claws and was swiping at him. Rosalia froze. At this critical moment, Blake rushed forward and shielded Rosalia from the griffin's attack. As a panicked Rosalia rushed to Blake's side, a mouthful of blood spurted from the boy's mouth. Blake knew this wasn't the time to hesitate. He brought Rosalia to a nearby tree hollow. Looking at the boy who had been injured protecting her, Rosalia tore off her clothes and bandaged his wound. Blake looked at the loosely wrapped cloth around his wound. Is this supposed to be treatment? Of course. I treated my father like this before, and he got better quickly. Blake didn't say anything more. Earlier, he had noticed the pouch on the griffin's belly and the scars on its legs, realizing that its child must have been taken, enraging it. That's why it attacked them. After all, it was unusual to encounter such a rare magical beast during the hunting season. Just as Rosalia was about to ask him how to escape, footsteps sounded outside. Both of them immediately fell silent. A hand appeared outside the tree hollow. The newcomer had fiery red hair and bloodstains on his face. It was Edmund. The redhead was surprised to find him there. Rosalia was also surprised by his appearance and asked if he had seen her father. I don't know. I'm lost too. Rosalia was bewildered. She had clearly seen Edmund being carried away by his mother. In the subsequent conversation, Rosalia learned why the griffin had attacked them. It was the redhead in front of her who had provoked it. So, you wanted the griffin's baby. Whether you wanted it or not, you should wipe the blood off your face first. If I saw you anywhere else, I'd definitely mistake you for a monster and attack you. Edmund listened to Rosalia, and after wiping the blood from his face, he noticed Blake sitting on the ground. He prepared to use fire to cauterize Blake's still bleeding wound, telling Rosalia to step outside first, as she had fainted before when he used his fire. Rosalia told him to go ahead. She wasn't afraid. Edmund didn't say anything more. When the flames touched the wound, Blake gritted his teeth in pain. You can't even handle this much. You should bite something to endure it. Before he could finish, Rosalia offered her arm. Blake, in pain, bit down hard. Rosalia did this simply to repay him for saving her earlier. One gritted their teeth, one endured the pain, and the other used magic. 2.5 minutes flashed by. The treatment was complete. Blake then told them to leave him. Rosalia recalled the painful memory from the book of being left behind in the fire by them. I told you, you're not allowed to die, so you can't give up on life. To prevent his daughter from meeting the high priest, the Duke had made many precautionary plans, but he hadn't accounted for his daughter's charm. Kidnapped by the boy, the two still met unexpectedly. The situation is urgent. I have no choice but to break my agreement with Duke Valencia. He then placed his hand on Blake's wound. With a flash of holy light, Blake's injuries were healed. Rosalia was amazed by this miraculous healing method. Looking at the long-haired Lorenzodd, Rosalia felt a strange sense of familiarity. Just as Lorenzodd was about to answer her, Duke Valencia arrived. Who taught you such an old-fashioned way to propose? Hearing the voice, Rosalia's face lit up with joy. She quickly ran over to him. The Duke knelt down on one knee and first checked his daughter for any injuries. He noticed a wrinkle on Rosalia's sleeve. When he lifted her sleeve, he saw a purplish bite mark. It didn't look like an animal bite, but a human one. Duke Valencia's face darkened. He looked at Blake, who didn't dare meet his gaze. It's okay, father. I told him to bite my arm. At the same time, Lorenzodd came up behind Rosalia and offered to heal her. However, Duke Valencia stopped him. After all, The Duke knew that the boy in front of him wasn't as harmless as he appeared. "I won't let anyone else touch my daughter." But when Lauren Zod said that if it wasn't treated in time, Rosalia's arm would be scarred, the Duke paused for a moment, then lowered the hand that was shielding his daughter. With a flash of golden light, Rosalia's injury slowly healed. Feeling the familiar sensation again, the girl couldn't help but think of the scene in her dream where she was being healed. Lauren Zod stared directly at Rosalia, making her blush and unable to look him in the eye. "You asked me earlier if we'd met before, right? Have you met someone who looks a lot like me?" The sudden question left Rosalia unsure how to answer. To avoid revealing the library's secret, Rosalia immediately denied what she had said. Lauren Zod clearly knew that the girl wasn't being honest with him, but with Duke Valencia present, he could only turn back and walk towards the unconscious griffin. He healed it and returned its baby. Lauren Zod then approached Edmund. "I hope you can restrain yourself during future hunts and not hunt animals other than designated prey. But if it appears before me, isn't it prey?" The innocent reply left Lauren Zod speechless. Soon after, everyone returned to the camp. Duke Ramirez, having received the news, also arrived. Rosalia assumed he was there to pick up the runaway Blake. But before she could speak, Duke Ramirez rushed up to them and slapped Blake across the face. "How dare you take the Duchess of Valencia hostage? Is this how he raised you?" Apologized to Duke Valencia immediately. Rosalia hadn't expected this. Blake, however, had anticipated his father's reaction. He went to Duke Valencia and apologized, but the Duke wasn't ready to let him off the hook. Rosalia was about to plead with her father when a servant interrupted their conversation. After whispering to him, Duke Valencia let Blake go for the time being and hurried home with Rosalia. Seeing her father's grim expression, Rosalia thought something had happened to Julian, but it wasn't him this time. Duke Valencia told Rosalia in a cold voice, "Lauren Zod is missing." The young boy, afflicted by a curse, was cold and ruthless. But ever since the girl had become his uncle's adopted daughter, her presence had brought him unexpected peace. He had made up his mind. Whatever Rosalia wanted, he would provide. Hearing Julian's firm tone, Lauren Zod couldn't argue. He asked Julian if he had ever wanted to kill Rosalia when the curse acted up. "Yes, and it was when I was conscious." Julian had complicated feelings for Rosalia. Although the aura she emitted calmed him, and she often showed him genuine kindness, Julian still couldn't suppress the urge to kill her. He didn't know how to define this feeling. Lauren Zod wasn't surprised. He had already suspected that Rosalia was the Saintess. He knew that Julian, on the one hand, longed for the Saintess who could purify his curse, but on the other hand, when consumed by the curse, he desperately wanted to eliminate her. Perhaps no one in the world could describe such conflicting emotions. Unable to explain, Lauren Zod didn't know how to answer. When you become an adult, you'll be able to filter out the deceptive emotions. Then you'll naturally have a definition. He then told Julian to rest and return to his study. Looking at the machine core Rosalia had brought back, perhaps having guessed the truth, Lauren Zod immediately left the mansion, intending to find the two who were participating in the hunting season. But halfway there, something unexpected happened. A girl stopped him. "Nice to meet you. My name is Cordelia. I'm here to retrieve what you stole." Looking at Cordelia, who looked exactly like Rosalia, further confirmed Lauren Zod's suspicions. Cordelia also guessed that the man in front of her knew the truth. She shamelessly offered to replace Rosalia as his niece. Lauren Zod immediately refused. After all, his niece was only Rosalia. To prevent anyone from disrupting his plans, Cordelia calmly uttered chilling words. "I wish you a safe journey." The gate to another dimension slowly opened. Lauren Zod knew this time there was no escape. He regretted that Rosalia had never truly accepted him. Before he could speak, the gate slammed shut. Cordelia picked up the machine core that had fallen to the ground. In the silent forest, only Lauren Zod's mount remained. Back home, Duke Valencia, after a thorough search, found no useful information. He discovered that the machine core Rosalia had brought back was also missing, along with Lauren Zod. It seemed Lauren Zod's research was complete, but such a smooth conclusion felt suspicious. Days passed. Rosalia constantly worried about the missing Lauren Zod. To comfort her, Emma told Rosalia a lie. If she put her fallen tooth under her pillow and recited a spell, the tooth fairy would grant her wish. Rosalia saw through the childish lie immediately. Have I ever lied to you? No. Then put your tooth under your pillow and try reciting the spell silently. The spell is Salagadula Machika Bulla Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo. Rosalia was speechless, her face filled with resistance. But late at night, Rosalia sat up in bed, placed the tooth under her pillow, and whispered Salagadula Machika Bulla Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo. After uttering the childish words, Rosalia blushed, then lowered her head, unable to hide her sadness. Finally, she spoke the words Lauren Zod had been longing to hear. Please bring Uncle Lauren, Uncle back to me. I give you my teeth every time I lose one. So please give my uncle back. Her uncle, who had discovered the truth, had been sent into a dimensional space. Julian was also going to be sent to the religious order. Rosalia couldn't understand why her father would make such a decision. She felt resistant. Ever since Lauren Zod's disappearance, no one could treat Julian's condition. Although the religious order didn't have a perfect cure, they could delay the onset of the curse. And the current high priest only had 3 years left to live. Perhaps after his reincarnation, he could cure Julian. But father, do you trust the religious order? They put on an act, but they're just as hateful as the emperor. Rosalia was about to go persuade Julian, but Duke Valencia stopped her. He still had something he hadn't told her. Since the previous fall, Julian experienced intense, uncontrollable cravings for Rosalia every so often. Julian had become addicted to Rosalia. Duke Valencia had no other choice. He could only hope Rosalia would trust him. He couldn't send Julian to the religious order to awaken Rosalia's divine power. If he had to choose between the two, he would choose Rosalia. And this was also Julian's wish. Rosalia returned to her room and hid under the covers. She couldn't bear to imagine what Julian would endure at the religious order. Just then, Julian came to her room. Rosalia, I know what you're worried about. Honestly, I wanted to go to the hunting season with you too. Whether it's your birthday, every time you go out, or even what clothes you wear and what you say, I don't want to miss anything. But you know, for me right now, that's impossible. I want to keep our promise 10 years from now. Rosalia understood that if Julian didn't go to the religious order, he might not live to see that day. But she selfishly wanted him to stay. The next moment, Julian used magic to conjure a blue rose and gave it to her, knowing their separation was inevitable. Rosalia quietly looked at Julian, wanting to etch his image in her memory. Julian took a scarf he had knitted from his bag and wrapped it around Rosalia's neck. I'm sorry I couldn't hunt a bear for you, but with this, you'll be warm this winter. Take care of yourself while I'm gone. I'll definitely come back. Also, Rosalia, do you like me? Tears welling in her eyes, Rosalia answered without hesitation, yes, I do. Me too. I don't want you to cry for me. It's hard to contact the outside world from the religious order. I probably won't be able to write to you. It's okay. You always find me. This time, it's my turn to find you. Hearing Rosalia's words, Julian smiled with relief. I'll be happily waiting for your letter. After Julian left for the religious order, Rosalia studied diligently, solely to find a way to cure Julian. Although in the books, he was merely a powerless side character. Her father always believed he was the daughter of the previous saintess. The librarian had also told her to believe in herself. Even if it was just her own delusion or a dream, Rosalia decided to stop being passively weak. She had to become strong enough. Seasons changed, and 3 years flew by. 12-year-old Rosalia finally reached the day of her reunion with Julian. The low-born adopted daughter of a duke held special feelings for the noble prince. Ever since Julian went to the religious order for treatment, Rosalia had been looking forward to the day they would meet again. 3 years had quickly passed. The high priest had finally died. Following tradition, the religious order selected a young boy and placed him within the angel's egg. This boy was about to be reborn as the new high priest. This also meant Rosalia could finally see Julian again. She had wanted to wear the scarf Julian gave her when he left, but Emma reminded her it was summer. Rosalia gave up on the idea. She was terrified Julian might have forgotten her. As the carriage traveled towards the church, Rosalia, unable to contain her curiosity, asked her father if life truly existed in the world. If a high priest could be reborn by borrowing another's body after death, then surely there must be some distant being people called God, right? Listening to Duke Valencia's words, Rosalia raised her fist, declaring that if she ever met God, she would punch him. Chatting idly along the way, the two arrived at the religious order. The emperor and empress, devout believers, had already arrived at 2:30 a.m., but Duke Valencia and Rosalia didn't care. They only wanted to see Julian as soon as possible. Looking at the angel's egg beneath the sacred tree, Rosalia's jaw dropped in astonishment. At the same time, the emperor arrived, accompanied by Raoul and the first prince. Rosalia felt a wave of annoyance and glanced at her father, who was currently deceiving the emperor. She was speechless. Duke Valencia suggested to the emperor that Julian be brought over first. The emperor refused without a second thought. I'll have him come over after the birth ceremony. There's no precedent for someone cursed attending the birth ceremony. Moreover, this ritual is crucial. We absolutely cannot allow impure forces to spread. Rosalia wanted to retort to the emperor's words. After all, curses weren't contagious, and as a member of the royal family, Julian should be allowed to attend. Soon, Duke Petros arrived at the ceremony. Seeing Blake and his younger brother after so many years, Rosalia greeted them. Blake clearly hadn't expected Rosalia to be so forward and responded with an embarrassed expression. He'd been worried that kidnapping Rosalia during the hunting expedition would make her dislike him. Just then, Duchess Petros, her husband, and Edmund arrived, interrupting them. Edmund strode towards Rosalia, grabbing her arm. Wow, you've really grown up, though you still look the same. Haven't you been eating enough? Still so small, just like before. Rosalia, her sore spot poked, flung Edmund's hand away. Let go of me, you smelly pig. The emperor watched their banter with a smile, but his expression quickly turned serious. The high priest's rebirth ceremony had begun. When the sun reached its zenith, it would be eclipsed by the moon, revealing a perfect halo of light. At that moment, the high priest would be reborn. Rosalia recalled what her father had once told her. The high priest's body looks like that of a 10-year-old child and never ages. But in reality, he's so old that it wouldn't be surprising if he died at any moment. He's no longer within the realm of humanity. From the moment of his rebirth, the high priest stared intently at Rosalia. Even as he was surrounded by the apostles, his gaze remained fixed on her. A chill ran down Rosalia's spine, and fear slowly filled her heart. The boy who had promised to grow up with her had chosen betrayal. From today onwards, I officially sever all ties with the Valencia family. Rosalia couldn't understand what had happened to Julian. For 3 years, she had longed for their reunion, only to be met with this. Just moments ago, after the rebirth ceremony, everyone had gathered in the banquet hall. Duke Valencia was asking Rosalia what compensation she wanted from the Petros family. Edmund's grip had left a bruise on her arm. Rosalia, who hadn't noticed until then, immediately urged her father to demand something valuable from them. As soon as she finished speaking, she heard that Julian had arrived at the banquet hall. She quickly turned to look. The boy she once knew had become a handsome young man. Rosalia blushed, captivated by his striking appearance. But Julian only glanced at her before turning away, offering no acknowledgement. Disappointed, Rosalia looked away, her heart a whirlwind of emotions. According to their previous agreement, Julian was free to leave after the previous high priest's death. The emperor asked him if he intended to return to the Valencia estate. No, I have an incurable illness. I can't burden the Valencia family any longer. So, I wish to return to where I belong, the royal family. The young man's words stunned Rosalia. She couldn't believe Julian would say such a thing. But what he said next shocked everyone present. From today onwards, I officially sever all ties with the Valencia family. Duke Valencia couldn't understand why his nephew would utter such decisive words. Are you saying you want to be disowned from the family? Prince Julian von Ortega. Without hesitation, Julian affirmed his words. I lived in Valencia Castle for treatment. During that time, my health deteriorated. Are you still feigning ignorance about this? After my mother became a member of the royal family, the Valencia family reaped considerable benefits. Everyone present should be well aware of this. Duke Valencia not only embezzled royal property, but also used me, a descendant of the royal family, as a pretext to win over and coerce numerous nobles. Rosalia remained silent, listening to these accusations. This completely chilled Duke Valencia's heart. He resolutely disowned Julian. As the banquet began, Blake stopped Julian, asking him what he was doing. Julian flung him off. You've always wanted to know when I would die, haven't you? I suppose this will finally answer your question. This clearly wasn't Blake's intention. He was about to question Julian further. But Rosalia's furious shout interrupted him. Are you crazy? The peaceful banquet hall instantly erupted in commotion. Knowing she couldn't stay there any longer, Rosalia grabbed Edmund and ran towards a corner. Two figures in the distance witnessed this scene. Julian watched their retreating figures, his heart a tangle of emotions. Are you all right? You placed all your hopes on Rosalia. Do you believe she is the saintess? Julian didn't seem to care much about whether Rosalia was the saintess or not. You only approached Rosalia because you believed she was the saintess, didn't you? Then you'd better think carefully. If Rosalia were just a lady of the Valencia household, would she still hold any value for you? With that, the figure walked away, leaving Blake to stew over his exposed intentions. Julian was about to leave the hall when he heard a commotion behind him. Edmund was performing, attracting a crowd. Julian was surprised that Rosalia wasn't with him. He wondered where she had gone. He couldn't help but search for her. As he looked around, a small hand suddenly reached out and grabbed him, causing him to stumble. Meanwhile, Duke Valencia received a note from Rosalia. After reading its contents, his expression was complex. He didn't know what to say. It was Rosalia who had grabbed Julian. Don't say anything. Let's run away together. Right now. Raised by her uncle since childhood, only to be betrayed by him on the day of their reunion. As Duke Valencia's adopted daughter, Rosalia refused to believe that this was the true intention of the boy who had once risked his life to save her. Determined to understand what had happened to Julian, Rosalia sought out Edmund. She hoped he could help divert the adult's attention. She had expected Edmund to haggle, but he agreed immediately on the condition that she let him bite her. Rosalia was dumbfounded, unsure what was going on in the madman's head. Soon, with Edmund's help, the two left the banquet hall. Julian then noticed the bite mark on Rosalia's arm. He immediately knew it was Edmund. After all, he was the only one who would dare disrespect a lady of the Valencia household. He insisted on taking Rosalia to a priest for treatment. But Rosalia had already paid a high price to get Julian out and refused to go back. She declared firmly that if they were going, Julian had to go with her. Julian's silence confirmed Rosalia's suspicions. His departure wasn't because he resented her father. It was definitely the religious order's doing. Meanwhile, the sun was beginning to set. The streets were filled with people celebrating the high priest's rebirth. Rosalia, caught off guard, was bumped and twisted her ankle. Just as she was about to fall, Julian caught her in his arms. Even in his embrace, Rosalia was worried about his health. You haven't changed a bit after all these years. Though your appearance has changed, your heart is still the Rosalia I cherish. While Rosalia was lost in thought, Julian gently placed her on a nearby bench and went to find something to treat her injury. Watching him go, Rosalia pondered his words, realizing she might have finally found her answer. As dusk settled, Julian returned and began bandaging her ankle. I heard there's a train station nearby. Let's go there and take a train. Let's leave. I'll take you wherever you want to go. But Julian refused. If he had heard those words 2 years ago, even knowing it was wrong, he would have agreed without hesitation. But now everything had changed. They had both grown up. Rosalia didn't press him further. They say Uncle Lauren was only formally removed from the family registry, that he's actually still living the same life as before. I asked Father if he was upset, and he said no, that he'd tell me when he understood the situation. But now I regret asking. He couldn't possibly be upset. I regret not telling him it wasn't his fault. So, it's not your fault either. Though I was angry that you hurt Father in public, ultimately, that's between you and him. But how can you go to the royal family? Those people want you dead. They want it as soon as possible. And you're actually going back there willingly. Just leave. Go somewhere where nobody knows you. Julian listened to Rosalia's impassioned words in silence. When I was buying the medicine, I saw the train station. It's just behind the clock tower. Rosalia's face lit up with a joyful expression as she processed this information. Julian, witnessing this scene, was momentarily stunned. Then, Rosalia grabbed his hand and pulled him towards the train station. However, because they arrived too late, tickets for the immediate departure were already sold out. They could only leave later that night. Waiting for the train, the two wandered aimlessly through the streets. Just then, Rosalia overheard passersby talking about fireworks later that evening. She decided they should go to the clock tower to watch. Beautiful fireworks bloomed in the sky. The two watched the fleeting spectacle before them. Julian's arm, resting on the ledge, trembled incessantly. Rosalia assumed he was afraid of heights. She smiled, comforting him. Just a little longer. We'll watch the fireworks and then leave on the train. Rosalia, Julian began, I made a deal with the Emperor. He promised me that after you leave the Alisa residence, Duke Alisa will never bother you again. In return, I have to sever all ties with the Valencia family. But Rosalia, even if I hadn't agreed, I wouldn't be able to be with you. Because even now, I can't stop myself from wanting to hurt you. The serpent's curse was taking hold. Rosalia, pinned beneath Julian, felt no fear. She began to chant the newly learned hymn. In her understanding, the saintess hadn't yet appeared. Perhaps she could heal Julian. Golden holy light spread between them. Tears of sorrow slid down Rosalia's cheeks. Now she finally understood how the religious order suppressed Julian's curse. Only a constant influx of divine power could hold it at bay. Rosalia couldn't do that yet, and from the beginning, Julian had never intended to leave with her. After an unknown amount of time, Duke Valencia found Rosalia. "Father, I want to see the high priest. I want to ask him if I'm truly the saintess." She was the genuine saintess, without a doubt, but a book predicting the future had altered her destiny. Rosalia had thought she could grow up healthy and loved under her father's care. But Julian's betrayal had wounded her deeply. Although she still couldn't confirm whether she was the saintess, for Julian's sake, Rosalia decided to seek verification from the high priest. Duke Valencia knew that Julian's curse had become a knot in Rosalia's heart. He finally agreed to take her to see the high priest. Julian's open defiance made Duke Valencia suspect the emperor's involvement. After all, the emperor always wanted to appear as a good father in the eyes of the public. That way, whether Julian died from the curse or was killed, the blame wouldn't fall on him. Rosalia was silent for a moment, then asked her father, "Will you really not be disappointed in me? You say you don't mind, but if it's confirmed I'm not the saintess, you'll still be disappointed, won't you?" Duke Valencia had agreed to Rosalia's request only to ease her worries. Regardless of the outcome, nothing would change. Soon, they arrived at the temple and met with the high priest. As his divine power slowly probed Rosalia's body, he found no characteristics of a saintess within her. Although she possessed a faint divine power, not only was her body too frail, but the high priest couldn't confirm whether Rosalia held the key to the library. He suggested Duke Valencia return for another verification after Rosalia came of age. The high priest looked at the young girl before him. Although he didn't know what she was planning, he seemed unwilling to tell her that she was the saintess. Rosalia was surprised to learn she possessed divine power. After all, when she used the hymn to heal Julian yesterday, nothing had happened. If I have divine power, why didn't the hymn have any effect? On whom did you use the hymn? Rosalia froze. Shouldn't the high priest first ask who taught her the hymn? Why would he ask such a question? Sensing something amiss, Rosalia told the high priest she had learned the hymn while studying with Simon, practicing as she learned. Have you ever been to a place with many books called a library? This made Rosalia even more wary, even though she had always believed it was a dream. The fact that she had healed after spending a night there after being injured. Rosalia shook her head, denying ever having been to such a place. Although the high priest's expression remained calm, his request for Rosalia to stay and study sacred history revealed his true intentions. Duke Valencia, paying him no further attention, left with Rosalia. But just as they left the temple, a man suddenly appeared behind them. "Are you heading home now? I've heard the results of the verification. What a pity. Years ago, I too thought I had found my niece. I came here full of hope." Facing the well-informed Duke Valencia, the man shot him a cold glance. Rosalia frowned at him as well. She found it strange that her father didn't refute the man's claim. She assumed he was simply dejected that she wasn't the saintess. But then, Duke Valencia stepped towards Duke Lampez. His voice was glacial as he asked, "Is Cordelia doing well at your estate?" A cold sweat instantly slicked Duke Lampez's cheeks. Cordelia had explicitly told him that she had never met Duke Valencia. He stammered, trying to explain that Cordelia had been missing for 10 years, and there was no way she could be at his estate. But he had clearly underestimated Duke Valencia's intelligence network. The Duke's subsequent questions chilled him to the bone. "Is that so? Then I suppose I'll have to ask someone else. Is Lauren Zod doing well these days? You should be well aware of the consequences of crossing the Valencia family." His scheme exposed, the pampered Duke Lampez could only bluster indignantly, telling Duke Valencia to stop spouting nonsense. Just then, Rosalia stepped forward. "Some people might be disappointed by this outcome, disappointed that their assumptions were wrong. But my father isn't like that. He's understanding and isn't angry at all." Her sarcastic words made Duke Lampez grind his teeth. He glared at the impassive father and daughter. Frustrated and defeated, Duke Lampez turned and stormed away, leaving Rosalia and her father to exchange a look. Rosalia had finally moved on from Julian's betrayal, although the high priest hadn't acknowledged her as the saintess. Her life continued much as before. However, ever since Julian had severed ties with the Valencia family, those who had believed Duke Valencia would gain influence through Julian's royal bloodline now predicted the family's imminent decline. Rosalia couldn't understand. Everything else in this world seemed to align with the novel, except for the absence of the saintess. And yet, she could wield divine power, which she shouldn't be able to. She still didn't fully accept her identity as the saintess. Her thoughts were interrupted by Simon's arrival. Simon informed Rosalia that her friends from before her adoption had come to see her. Surprised by their visit, Rosalia, despite her reluctance to interact with them, went to the drawing room to understand their purpose. Years of education had refined her demeanor, giving her a dignified and composed presence. Her two childhood friends, Melissa and Owen, were visibly shocked to see her. They stiffly offered her a curtsy and a bow. Melissa and Owen explained their reason for coming. Although everyone is speaking ill of the Valencia family, we know the truth is different. We've received kindness from the Valencia family and don't want to stand idly by at this time. So we wanted to offer our help. Rosalia was puzzled. Why would they say such a thing? In her mind, her family hadn't helped them expecting anything in return. Besides, as minors, they couldn't possibly resolve the crisis facing the family. Just then, Melissa stood up from the sofa. Lifting her skirt, she revealed a prosthetic leg. Melissa expressed her deep gratitude to the Valencia family. Without their help, she wouldn't be able to walk on two legs. Years ago, I became permanently disabled trying to escape that hell. I had given up on walking, given up on life itself. The day I stood up again, I was so happy. And I always remember you. You were the one who convinced them to give me a prosthetic leg. I know you don't want to see me. But before she could finish, Rosalia interrupted. She explained that she hadn't been avoiding them, but rather thought they should move on and forget about her and the proprietress. However, she agreed to speak to her father on their behalf. The person you should be thanking isn't me, but him. You can stay here for as long as you like. When Duke Valencia learned of this, he didn't refuse their offer. After all, the family's reputation was in tatters. Associating with them wouldn't bring any benefits. They were either foolish or incredibly kind. The Alisa family was also recruiting children from other families and commoners. As the sole heir to the Valencia family, Rosalia would one day become the head of the household. But she wasn't Duke Valencia's biological daughter, nor was she a noble. Now, she had also been deemed not the saintess. Surely, someone would use her background against her. If Rosalia had a few reliable allies, she could overcome these challenges even without Duke Valencia's support. And so, all the children who had been helped by the Valencia family came to the Duke's mansion. Standing on the terrace, Rosalia looked down at them. Father wants them to prove their worth. I need to understand their strengths first. The first child's talent left Rosalia stunned. Her father's advice finally sparked an awakening in the young girl. To avoid being manipulated in the future, Rosalia gathered her former playmates, preparing to seek out allies. She was ready to find support. The first girl only knew how to draw. Rosalia didn't dismiss her. Rosalia asked the girl if she could draw a portrait of the person her father loved most. It wasn't Rosalia herself. It was Duke Valencia's first love, Rosalind. However, Rosalia had never seen her. She could only offer a simple description. Rosalind had red hair, the same eyes as Rosalia, and was incredibly beautiful. Seeing the girl's troubled expression, Rosalia immediately thought of Simon. Perhaps he would have a solution. But when Rosalia and the girl found Simon, they were told that he, too, had never seen Rosalind in person or a portrait of her. This was because after Rosalind's marriage, the religious order had destroyed all records of her. The whole affair felt strange. It was as if the order wanted to make Rosalind disappear, as if she had never existed. Simon was puzzled by Rosalia's desire for a portrait of Rosalind. Rosalia explained that she simply wanted to appease her father. After all, Rosalia couldn't help him with the rumors circulating outside. If she could make her father happy, perhaps the girl would also gain his approval sooner. I think, although His Grace hasn't forgotten Lady Rosalind. But before Simon could finish, he realized Duke Valencia was standing right behind him. The Duke merely glanced at him before turning to Rosalia, asking what she was doing. Knowing that the Duke had overheard everything, Simon hurriedly explained the situation about Rosalind to Rosalia before rushing off to attend to the Duke. The girl then then grasped Rosalia's hands, thanking her and saying that she now knew how to create a portrait the Duke would like. Not long after, Rosalia brought Melissa to the stables. Looking at the Pegasus, which, like herself, had a prosthetic limb, Melissa was surprised and asked Rosalia if she had ever ridden it. Since Rosalia's fall from the Pegasus on her 8th birthday, she hadn't been able to overcome her fear for 4 years. Melissa, perhaps sensing the lingering trauma from that incident, said, "You don't have to force yourself to overcome your trauma. Pain isn't something you can conquer just by trying. My leg still aches sometimes. I asked the doctor, but he said it's phantom limb pain all in my head. Actually, both Owen and I know that this is a heartache that no prosthetic, no matter how advanced, can heal. And do you remember, the day in the orphanage when he tried to break my legs, you were the one who yelled at him and jumped on him. Although it's a bit late to say this now, I really want to thank you." The unexpected gratitude made Rosalia uncomfortable, but it also untied a knot in her heart. In Duke Valencia's study, the Duke learned that the girl before him wanted to become a knight for the family. That person was Melissa. Her resolve was unwavering, driven by her desire to protect someone. "I heard that you being able to walk at all is a miracle. It took you 2.5 years to adapt to the prosthetic and walk normally. But that's too slow. At that pace, you won't be able to protect anyone. I won't entrust important responsibilities based on mere potential." A 12-year-old girl was about to be betrothed, and her father, the Duke, couldn't change that decision. Not long before, Duke Valencia hadn't refused Melissa's request to become Rosalia's guard. After all, having a loyal person by his daughter's side would give him peace of mind. However, upon seeing the portrait the other girl had painted of him and Rosalia, Duke Valencia was puzzled. He didn't think he had ever worn such an expression. From the girl's perspective, although Rosalia had requested a portrait of the Duke's first love, she believed he would prefer this scene. After all, as family, he should love Rosalia more than anyone else. Duke Valencia pondered this thought. If the person in the painting were Rosalind, he certainly wouldn't have that expression. As the days passed, the Duke received some infuriating news. Have they lost their minds? Arranging a marriage for a 12-year-old girl. It turned out that Rosalia had received a marriage proposal. Everyone knew that Rosalia was the heir to the Valencia family. The only problem was that she wasn't blood related to them. So, the retainers had scoured the family tree of distant relatives and finally found a boy of the same generation as Rosalia. Simon told the Duke that Rosalia would eventually marry and couldn't stay by his side forever. And even if Duke Valencia opposed this match, then he would be the one to marry. Would you marry someone you don't love, and even have children with them? Would you be willing to pass the position of heir to that child? This was, after all, Duke Valencia's duty. When Rosalia heard the news, she echoed her father's words. Had they lost their minds? And he's 25 years old, a boy 13 years older than me. The thought sent shivers down Rosalia's spine. Duke Valencia told Rosalia that although she had to meet the suitor, she didn't have to marry him. She just needed to play along, and he would handle the rest. And so, the next day, Rosalia met the old baby. He had grayish-blue hair and wore an expression he clearly thought was charming. Benjamin, the eldest son of Viscount Morales, was currently unemployed. As Rosalia looked at him with undisguised disdain, Benjamin casually tossed a doll at her, annoyed that he treated her like a child. She handed the doll to Melissa. "I heard you were a relative of my father's, so I had some expectations," Rosalia said, her voice laced with sarcasm. "But now I see I was mistaken. You don't even have basic manners. Don't ever claim to be a Valencia blood again. It's embarrassing." Rosalia expected Benjamin to be speechless, but she clearly underestimated his ability to be utterly shameless. He patted her hat condescendingly, saying he'd be more mindful in the future, then walked ahead, leaving Rosalia utterly bewildered by his bizarre behavior. When they arrived at the dining hall, Benjamin began lecturing Rosalia about the importance of studying hard so she could become the head of the Valencia family. He added that since she was of low birth, she needed to work even harder. After all, he droned, Duke Valencia won't dote on you forever. Before he loses interest, you need to improve your abilities. I'll make an exception and give you a little more time. I'll wait 6 years for you. He was completely oblivious to the hand reaching for his head. The next second, he was slammed onto the table by a red-haired figure. The sudden attack stunned Benjamin. He looked up angrily. "Who dares lay a hand on me?" He sputtered. "What's with this stray boar?" His first attempt at courtship had been ruined by the red-haired Julian. Rosalia hadn't wanted to come either. But hearing Julian refer to himself as a stray boar, Rosalia was confused. Even if Benjamin had used that insult, Julian didn't have to agree with it. The enraged Benjamin demanded Julian pay for his ruined clothes. Julian grabbed him again. "Now I've wrinkled your clothes even more. What are you going to do about it?" Julian's defiance stunned Benjamin. He turned and ordered Rosalia's guards to attack Julian. The guards, wisely, refused, stating their duty was only to protect the young lady of Valencia. Thankfully, Rosalia intervened, stopping the escalating conflict. "While Boar, sit down," she commanded. Though confused, Julian obeyed. "If you have a problem," he muttered to Benjamin, "come find me at Petro's Ford." Benjamin was startled. Before he could react, Rosalia dismissed him. Fuming, Benjamin left, vowing to return. Once he was gone, Rosalia breathed a sigh of relief. She was curious why Julian was there. He didn't answer, instead asking what she was doing with such a wretched person. Seeing she didn't want to tell him, Julian explained his presence. "Blake hasn't been going out much lately, so I'm bored, and he's been acting strange." Meanwhile, Benjamin arrived home to a scolding from his father. "This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You're practically Duke Valencia now. Are you afraid of young Master Petros? Next time, you must make that child like you. No matter how much the Duke dotes on her, she's just a low-born, 12-year-old girl. It shouldn't be hard to deceive her." Benjamin took his father's words to heart. The next day, he sought out Rosalia again. Though she loathed him, for her father's sake, she agreed to let him accompany her to buy bread. The reunion was awkward. Benjamin sneered at Rosalia's insistence on doing everything herself, assuming she was simply used to being poor. "Children are so predictable, always craving sweets," he remarked. Rosalia retorted that Duke Valencia also loved them and often stole hers. Benjamin scoffed, asking what she would do if the Duke abandoned her. Rosalia, having never considered such a possibility, declared she would always be the Duke's most beloved daughter. She turned to Benjamin, adding, "Unlike some people, I don't get carried away by such trivial things." Benjamin flew into a rage, recalling his father's words about putting Rosalia in her place. He raised his hand and slapped her across the face. Rosalia was stunned. No one had dared strike her since she arrived at the Duke's mansion. The guards rushed forward. "If you weren't lucky enough to be adopted, you wouldn't be living this luxurious life. You're nothing special." Before he could finish, screams echoed through the air. The stray boar had returned, ignoring Rosalia's attempts to stop him. "Really, wild boar, I told you to stop." Rosalia grabbed Julian's wrist. "You can hit him, but let me vent my anger first."